Look at this, guys. We're live. It's tea time. Welcome, my friends. It's a special edition of Tea Time, of course. The last one before the upcoming expansion, Janthir Worlds. A very special time here as well. And look, I'm gonna actually start this off. I'm gonna actually set the tone here. I have brought Darens, high energy Zoomer. I'm honestly feeling pretty good about the expansion as well. We've got Lara, ultimate mental attitude, impossible to despair. There's no despair here. And I'm not even sure if that's going to be enough to actually counteract Doomzor here as well. Like, here he is. He's ready to rain on everyone's parade and just like go nuclear on the expansion. So that look, I'm setting up the conflict here. Like there's going to be drama here, guys. This is going to get probably out of hand, to be honest. But anyway,
Next week I'm gonna block Sneb because I'm afraid that he's gonna bring me down with all this dooming. I'm so scared.
I've already blocked him, actually, but that's not new. I've had him blocked for years. But anyway, welcome everyone to the show. We've got Darens on here as well. We've got Sneb, and of course, we have Lara. And honestly, where to start? I guess the first thing we want to talk about is like, what is actually happening? Because this is a funny thing. It's almost like appropriately topical here as well, because, you know, I was chatting with Sneb yesterday. He had no idea what's coming in the expansion. And then right now, Darren self-reported before the stream started here, and he didn't know what was coming in the expansion as well. I guess I've got one person left to ask. Lara, what do you know what's coming in the expansion?
I know what's coming in the expansion. We're getting open world maps. Yes, we're getting new story. We're getting the spears, which is actually pretty cool that that's coming on day one. You know, if so the weapons came on later. We're getting homesteads. That's kind of, I guess we're getting lots of achievements and stuff to do, right? Like collection, story, like run around. It's gonna be, we know there's gonna be world bosses in like one of the new maps. We know there's gonna be like events all around one of the maps. Also, hold on. Appropriate. We're getting a cute cat mount, which I'm really excited about.
That is true.
It looks really good. But yeah, I think the big thing that lots of people on this call care about is the raid. But the raid's coming later. The raid is coming in patch 1. And also the Convergence, which Darren thought was coming on Tuesday.
I did think
but
that.
It's not.
I did think that.
It's coming like with the first big patch.
It's not gonna. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing. But guys, we're getting hearts as well on release. Repeatable hearts. Oh my god! Let's go!
Are you going to be doing hearts on repeat? Is that your goal, Darens?
I mean, they did kind of mention that the more you do them, the more you're going to get. So I'm kind of scared that I'm going to get forced to do that. We're definitely going to have to see. But there's also like other armor sets that we're going to get. Like the Wizard's Vault one. There's the Wizard's Vault one. I'm sure there's going to be an open world one. I don't actually remember. But yeah, there should be things to be aiming for. And maybe those armor sets will be needed in order to get the Legendary Spear or something like that, or some other collection. We'll have to see, right? Same thing like we had on Soto. So hopefully we have something to work on the expansion, right? Even on release.
Yeah, and like homesteads is a big one, right? Like if you are the kind of person who cares about homesteads, I imagine you'll be chasing homestead decorations from achievements and whatever. And also another, I guess, like grinds that most of us are gonna do early on is the relics, right? Like unlocking all the new relics that are coming and stuff.
Ooh, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah, those are not gonna immediately be in the legendary. I actually have to like unlock them and stuff.
Yeah. I think that they're really trying to add new progression systems to the game that kind of fit within the Guild Wars 2 paradigm here. I think they tried to do, they started doing this with Soto. You had stuff like the rifts, right? And particularly the way legendary armor works, right? Like all that kind of stuff, that there's kind of some grind built into that, you know, inherently. And I think we are going to see that with Janthir Worlds as well. Like, in particular, the hearts actually really remind me, the way they described it in some of the blog posts, it reminds me of reputation systems, actually, from other MMOs, where you got to do, like, your rep grind. Because they were kind of saying, oh, you know, you do the heart over and over again, and, the bear is going to go like, oh, well, you can get some more loot now. Wow, you can get better rewards for doing the hearts. That's kind of what that sounds like to me. And yeah, like the homesteads in particular, I think it's like a really great reward structure for the player, actually. Like, this game can't give you better items because there's no vertical progression, but I think that giving you like an actual tangible thing that you can put in your house, that's a pretty solid way of kind of working within the constraints of how Guild Wars 2 operates, actually. So I think the homestead is going to be like a pretty key thing to be going after on launch there as well. In addition to, of course, just the basic masteries. It looks like they have tried to make the homestead kind of at least useful for people who don't care about that. Like you get like an XP boost, right? For they said it was like a PvP reward track gain, right? Is what you get for being in it. Like you get better reward tracks and stuff like that, I think, for like AFKing in the homestead. So there's there's some stuff there as well.
Yeah, I guess I'm the only worry for me is that WoW, for example, had a lot of issues with like dailies and reputations because people would get bored of the same system and having to do daily and everything. And are they actually gonna like is ArenaNet gonna recognize those problems that they had and fix them before so we don't have a horrible hearts every time in this expansion? We'll have to see, right? So they preemptively fixes all these issues. But I mean, they usually do this like whenever they do a new or copy or get inspired or something, they usually make it a bit better. So we'll see. And we'll definitely have hearts. Have had hearts for multiple years. So hopefully they're very good hearts. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not as susceptible to issues like that because at the end of the day, like you'll probably just be able to farm other stuff and then buy the homestead material. So if you like really hate the hearts, you can probably get around them, right? Because I imagine the rewards of these hearts is going to be relevant, right? It's going to be giving you probably a bunch of stuff that you can probably like unlock cosmetics, right? You can probably unlock some of the materials and all that kind of stuff for the homestead.
Or recipes.
Like recipes, right? Yeah, all the usual stuff that comes along with hearts. But there's probably like a couple of ways you can get around it if you like really, really hate it. Like, as always, right, there's usually like 15 different ways to kind of get the job done. When it comes to getting stuff in Guild Wars. So I'm actually not super worried about it. I also think like, I'm not going to say that I'm coped out on hearts actually, but I don't hate the idea of actually making hearts relevant in a sense. Like, I recently did a full map completion. So I actually have some leg to stand on here when talking about this topic actually. And do you know the thing that is in common with every heart that sucks is that it just overstays its welcome a little bit too much. Like, you go, I'm filling the progress bar and blasting. That's kind of fun, right? There's, I think that's a quest, right? Questing. It's MMOs, right? You do quests. And the only reason why you go, well, this sucks is because one, you can't kill things to progress. I think that always feels really bad. Or if it's just undertuned and you're like, oh yeah, you want me to go and pick up this rock 75 times? Like, oh, well, okay, well, this isn't really that much fun, to be honest. Overall.
Or you have to like, or you have to like wait for like things to respawn. And you're like, well, I guess I'm gonna stay here or go somewhere else, and then I forgot about my heart, and I have to come back.
So as long as they do that well, I'm actually kind of feeling positive about it because I almost like the idea of the map doesn't have a meta event on it. Like we know there are world bosses that are here too, so that's like a reason to go back to these maps and farm these. You're going to be wanting to farm those world bosses, obviously. There's going to be a bunch of rewards, I'm sure, attached to those. But I do like the idea of like having some reason to go back to maps that are a bit more exploration focused because I think Path of Fire is a good example of this, and Janthir Wilds to me really does feel like almost a refinement. It really reminds me of Core Guild Wars 2, and a little bit of Path of Fire attached in there as well. And I think they took a look at Path of Fire's strengths and the weaknesses. They looked at the beautiful maps, the vast, expansive environments that are stunning, but then they realized there is no reason to come back here, right? Like there is nothing here. Like you play through Path of Fire and then that's it pretty much. There's really not a lot going on. On a lot of these maps. And I think they wanted to try and rectify that a little bit by having this kind of like almost reputation-esque system that you can go in, like keep playing there. They'll probably have like good rewards, like important rewards to the homestead and so on, like and various other systems, I'm sure, attached to completing these hearts. I kind of actually like that idea in concept, like going back and doing this. And you know what? Before I want to bring Sneb in because he's ready to activate over there. I can see him. I'm honestly feeling a bit scared actually. I'm actually scared at this point. But one thing I would say is that I would encourage everyone to think about the rushes that they did recently, in particular the Living Season 3 rush. That was actually really fun, in my opinion. I like that a lot. Because even though those maps don't have meta events on them, they kind of do, but not really, right? Like, they have like bosses and stuff, but not really what we would consider a meta event, I feel like, or what a traditional meta is in Guild Wars 2. when everyone was surging in there, like doing all the activities, completing the events, right, and like doing all that crazy stuff, right, and like killing all the little bosses and finding stuff to do there, it was actually really exciting. Like, so if players get funneled into these more exploration-oriented maps, I think they can actually be really exciting, a really fun, cool experience to have there. But yeah, I guess that's kind of my overall thoughts on this. Now I want to bring Sneb in. I want to see what he's thinking about Janthir Wilds, the Breaker.
Well, when it comes to hearts, I actually think hearts are a very good thing. Hearts allow players to have some kind of direction. It guides them around the map, and it will guide them towards events. Like when you were doing the core Tyria map completion, I think one thing I kept hearing you say is, "Oh, there's an event. Like this is really good." So the heart was guiding you toward the events, or the events were guiding you toward heart. They kind of work synergistically, and as a result, players feel a little bit more confident in moving around and understanding what they're supposed to do. If you don't have hearts, players tend to feel a little bit lost. So I think that's they could have done the meta event thing where it's just one big meta event. Think like Dragon's Stand or something. But I really like the idea of having a map where it's a little bit more chill. They're guiding you around the map. You have little activities to do. And I think as long as they make the events around the hearts kind of fun, the hearts will almost happen automatically and you won't even think about them.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, because sometimes you're doing a meta and the heart just, it completes and you're super happy. You're like, oh, I got the heart bug. It's awesome.
I think that's a great point.
Actually pretty nice. Yeah.
I actually do want to bring one thing up in the chat, actually, real quick, that I really hope they don't do this. I think one of the worst things about Hearts, and this feels super bad, I feel like, actually, in Path of Fire in particular, is that you can't access the vendor unless you've completed it on that specific day. Right? Like, that feels so bad to me, actually. Like, that is pain. It's like, no. Sometimes I just want to go talk to the bear and purchase some goods. Okay, that's what I want.
I think, to be fair to them, I think the reason why they did that is because, like, if they didn't, nobody would do the hearts again ever. But, like, it's a bad solution because, like, everyone's going to feel like you're taking something away instead of getting something. So if they actually give you more stuff from doing the hearts repeatable more times, like they said they would, this shouldn't be an issue, right? But also, hopefully, yeah, that doesn't happen for sure. We'll have to see.
Yeah, it's like a psychological thing. Because effectively, I think what you can buy from the vendor each day is like the reward from the heart. But it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like, oh, I did the heart and now I get this. It feels like I did the heart and now I can talk to the vendor to buy this, right?
Yeah, it's just not, it doesn't work. Yeah, for sure. And I do think it does seem like this expansion is trying to like bring back the magic in Guild Wars 2. Because like a lot of people complain about Soto. But like, in my opinion, Path of Fire wasn't really that big of an interesting expansion other than with mounts. Like the metas weren't that good, the mounts weren't that, I guess they were kind of explorable, but like they felt like Guild Wars 2 and they felt big and everything. So it seems like they're trying to recapture that and bring people that thing. And like, yeah, we're not getting that much, content on release, but I feel like that's what they're trying to do. And if they achieve that, I think we're gonna be pretty okay, in my opinion.
I had like such a good time with Path of Fire on launch. Like straight up. I think Path of Fire was like my favorite expansion launch. Like just running around exploring those maps for the first time and getting the mounts and leveling them up and stuff. Like my first, like I guess like the honeymoon phase with Path of Fire was like really awesome and I really enjoyed it. But then like once we were done, I was kind of done, right? There wasn't much reason to go back. Like I got my Griffin and I got all the masteries and I got the map completion. I was like, oh yeah, now it's kind of done with this now. But honestly, by the time I was feeling that, we were also having like the first Path of Fire post patch, right? We were having like Living God Season 4 and we had like Wing 5 coming out and stuff. I guess this will be kind of similar, hopefully, right? Hopefully that first experience will be quite good. And then by the time I'm sitting there like, oh, I'm kind of done with Janthir Wilds, that's when the race comes out. Hopefully. I mean, we'll see how long it manages to keep us busy, right? I think for me, it's going to keep me busy because I'm into the homesteads. So like, I'm going to have big homestead grinds.
Yeah.
Just like trying to get like all the
maybe
little
big homestead swipe, Yeah. Maybe it's a big swipe. But yeah, I kind of want to get Sneb in there. I feel like he got immediately shut down. Like we derailed him. I want to re-rail Sneb, on what's going on there. Like what are you thinking about Janthir Wilds, Sneb? But the package on launch, the features, the juice.
Well, like I've said before, one of the biggest struggles, at least for me, when it comes to this new expansion model is understanding what's coming out and when. And you might be thinking, Sneb, well, that's just stupid. Like, they told us exactly when everything is coming out. And I understand logically that I can go look at a map and go, okay, well, this is when it's all coming out. But the way that they market it, they're kind of giving you bits and pieces of what's going to come. But some of that isn't happening for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And I keep getting mixed up on what's at launch and what's not. And if I am feeling that way, surely some of the players who are maybe a bit more casual or just kind of saw it in passing are going to be confused about what's coming out on launch. And then come launch day, their expectations will be wildly different than what actually happens. So I'm a little bit confused because I actually thought that there were some of these things that were coming out at launch that are not. For example, I'm pretty sure Convergences aren't coming out.
That's right. Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Patch 1.
And I thought they were. I'm still a little bit confused about what was it? There's like a world boss or something happening, and I thought that was a convergence. I'm just confused about all of it. I think maybe I need to do more reading, but I actually think that it's inherently complex. It's inherently complex when you're releasing things on this quarterly patch, but you're marketing them as if it's all one expansion, right? It's all one expansion, but they're saying, oh, well, it comes in parts. And I think as soon as you do that, it becomes very difficult to communicate that to the consumer.
I agree. Yeah, like, typically, if you compare the marketing of Janthir Worlds, and kind of like the feature list that they gave us, like with these studio updates and the blog posts and so on, and of course the expansion page, it lists features that are not coming on launch. Whereas that's obviously not the case in other MMOs. Other MMOs say, yeah, this is what's happening. This is what's happening on launch, right? Here's all the stuff. This is what you can do. And then when a future patch comes up, like in World of Warcraft, right? They do like, it's going to be patch 10.0 expansion, or 11.0 in this case. Then it's going to be like 11.1, right? 11.2 and so on. And like each of those things will have its own kind of release there as well. Whereas Guild Wars 2 has taken a different strategy with its marketing. I guess with trying to give you an overview of everything that's kind of releasing there as well. I think that is kind of intentional though, because what I do find interesting actually about Janthir Worlds is how different each of the releases actually is. Especially because of the PvP mode getting in there. Like, for example, like I think that many players, like a lot of the raid community, right? Like the launch is not going to be super exciting, right, for a lot of players in that demographic necessarily. But the first quarterly update very much is, of course, with the raid and the Convergence coming out, and then the update after that, with of course the challenge modes also kind of kicking into gear at that point. And then PvP players, like they can mess around with spears on launch, and then good news, there's going to be a PvP game mode coming down the line in the expansion as well. So it's definitely an interesting strategy, and we're definitely kind of treading kind of untested waters, I suppose, with this kind of refinement of a
big marketing problem with this. They have a big marketing problem. The problem is that if they only focused on the things at launch, it wouldn't be appealing enough.
Ooh,
that's the reality,
bro.
It would be too small.
You know what? Is that true though, dude?
Yes.
Like the homestead, homestead is such a knockout. To be honest, I'm not gonna lie.
No. Hear me out. Okay. If they never spoke about raids, if they never spoke about convergences, if they never spoke about the PvP mode, if they never gave us any of that other information, the stuff that's coming after launch day, it would not feel like a substantive expansion. So they have to talk about the things that are coming for the entirety of the expansion cycle, which is a year. And the obvious consequence of that is that it will confuse people. There's almost nothing you can do to avoid at least some confusion. I actually think that they're doing a very good job, pretty much the best they can as far as transparency. They give us a little roadmap. It's on the wiki. They communicate that in pretty much every blog post. But it's still going to be just a bit confusing because there's lots of dates and times, and there's lots of like nitty gritty little details about, oh, well, like the challenge mode's coming a bit later. You know what I mean? So I'm not knocking the expansion. I actually think that the value is exceptional. Like you actually get a lot for your money, but it's on a year cycle. They cannot go and just be like, yeah, the expansion is only homesteads in the 2 maps, because people would go, huh? Well, but what about the PvP players? What about the World vs. World players? What about they would get so many complaints. So the way that they're doing it is actually good marketing. They're giving it all out on a platter. They're saying everything that's happening, but it just has a natural consequence, and that's okay.
Right. I do think, like, I don't know. Do you guys remember before the expansion when people were talking about what is that feature that they're talking about in that article that was supposed to be waiting? We were waiting for like 5 years, and some people were saying that it was housing, and some people were saying that it was raid.
Raids. It was
Right?
it was
raid. Right?
totally
It was
raids.
It was
yeah.
raid. Yeah, but I think a lot of I remember being the only person who said, "I bet we're getting homesteads and we're getting a raid," and everybody called me crazy, right? And I think it's because it was too much. It was insane that we would get that much, and I think that's what it is. Like, I think the homestead is so big that putting on release is a good amount of content, enough to probably sell an expansion, right? But the fact that we're getting raids as well would have been like, holy, it's too much, right? So putting on the patch afterwards, I think I mean, it's not ideal. It would be way better if it was there, in my opinion. But I think it would still sell the expansion. It just, yeah, as you said, it's something that they have to do, right? But I don't think it's like, oh my god, no to buy this.
I think it would definitely do well. I do think that it obviously helps, right? It says, you know, like you can already see this. Like I think there's a lot of people who are interested. Like hell, there's I've even heard that legendary NA guild MNF is coming back for the raid, right? There's a lot of people who are interested in this kind of stuff. So I think it's good to have that kind of like on the roadmap. And of course, I think they'll probably publish a roadmap. They did this with Soto, right? Didn't they publish a roadmap on launch, or was it slightly before launch?
I think so.
It was something like that.
It's like week 1 or something.
Yeah, it was pretty early on in you know, in the expansion. So I think, you know, we'll see that. I don't think it helps, and it will definitely help to kind of bolster the interest in the expansion and appeal to a wider demographic of players. To be honest, there as well. But I don't know, like I'm torn on this because you could say like, yeah, you know, they're kind of like they're using it to sell the expansion. But on the other hand, right? Like let's actually talk about the practicality here. Like if you don't mention this stuff in the expansion cycle, then to an extent, like it's going to have way less reach, right? People aren't going to hear about it. Like if they just drop, or if they didn't mention there's a raid in Janthir Wilds and they like randomly drop one 3 months into the expansion, like the target demographic is actually going to be underserved by that marketing, no? Like they're not going to hear about it potentially because if they've already been like, oh yeah, this expansion's only got homesteads in it, they're just going to go do something else and like not hear about the raid, no? Like, or am I crazy? I don't know. But
no, sure. I mean, it's not the same. Like I was gonna say, like WoW also doesn't get the raid instantly, but it's way earlier, so it's not really. And we all know that WoW is gonna get the raid, so like, how can we use that? But
yeah,
I don't know. I think it's.
I think that's a really good point to bring up, actually, Darens, because I really do think that, you know, people give ArenaNet marketing shit, and you know what? They probably could do a bit better, right? You know, there's some, you know, but yeah, I thought their spear trailers are pretty good. That Ellie one in particular, that was pretty hype. And I'm sure there'll be a trailer on the launch, right, like there was for Soto as well. But I do think this game is hard to market because they don't have a formula, right? In a lot of ways, you don't need to advertise that there's a raid in World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy because obviously there's going to be a raid, right? Like everyone knows that, right? Like that's going to be the case.
Pattern.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a very established,
the same every time, basically.
Yeah.
And they haven't, right? I'm pretty sure WoW hasn't said like, oh my god, this is raid, guys. There's been doing cute.
Well,
like,
they say
matches,
they obviously say there's like a new raid coming, right? They say, oh yeah, we got the dungeons, we got the M+, we got the new raid.
But there's no raid cinematic, right? Like right now, at least it's gonna be on launch, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it will be in the story, obviously, and they'll hype it up there. I mean they've done like some lore videos on that, and obviously like some of the raid characters like pop up in the trailers and stuff like that, and like the cinematic stuff. But yeah, like it's, you know, they don't need to explicitly state it, right? Like you know they really don't. Yeah. But yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
and honestly, I think the feature set, even on launch day, is quite strong. Like if I compare it to Soto, like in comparison, you know, like the rift hunting, it's like a cool concept, but I don't think it was as much of a big deal, especially like outside of MMO communities, as something like housing. Like for example, I did a sponsored video about homesteads this week, and somebody made a post on the Final Fantasy subreddit about the housing thing and just being like, yo, look at this housing. I think the marketability of something like housing is like much higher than something like Rift.
Oh yeah. No, I think the feature set overall is Homestead's is like a giga feature. That's like the Omega. No, that's Guild Wars 3 locked in right there, bro. Okay, that's what that is. Yeah. That's
true. That is true.
Homesteads are by far the best feature they will ever release. I don't even know if they can top it. The reason that homesteads are so good is because financially for them, they'll be exceptional. There's so many things that you
Yeah.
can make to add into the gem store. There's so many things that you can add to the game as rewards. You can go and revitalize all old content because you just add homestead stuff to it. It's the ultimate way to sort of personalize and express identity in the game. It's your home. You get to build it. It's user generated content. People are going to make videos about it. Welcome to my homestead, etc., etc., etc. It's perfect. It's for the kind of demographic that Guild Wars 2 serves. People will absolutely adore homesteads in every way. But even then, I think that if you only said you've got Warclaw, homesteads, 2 maps with 1 world boss, if those were the only things they were advertising for the expansion, I think it would still be a little light. And that's why they obviously have to tell you what's coming in the subsequent patches and sort of wrap that into the expansion bundle.
Sure.
But they haven't established that pattern yet, that pattern of expectation. This is them establishing that pattern. So Janthir Wilds is a super important expansion from the perspective of it will help establish future expectations and patterns moving forward with this sort of expansion cycle.
Yeah, like I hope this is the pattern because, like, you know, like this to me, Janthir Wilds feels like Sodo but more refined, right? Like format wise, like the way that
And
they're
it should.
pacing it, the way that they're not gonna split a map in 3 different releases, right? Like the first release is gonna focus on the raid instead, raid/convergence. But like, I love the idea of this being the format. I like the idea of like every yearly expansion adds like a new homestead. It does like a mount rework, like the Warclaw, maybe a whole new mount. It does like maps. It does like weapons on launch, and every expansion has a raid in like some of the patches, right? Again, we have no clue if that's what they're gonna do, but you know, I think that would be such a nice combo of like both serving like, you know, the more, I guess, like demographic that cares about stuff like homesteads, but also having people be like, yeah, there's going to be a new raid each year, right? Each expansion has a new raid.
Yeah,
I really hope that this is sort of the format going forward because, of course, like there's always things we can improve about it, right? There's always things like, I think a big one that we've talked about at great length is like, will there be enough stuff to go for on day 1, right? It would be cool if there was like some form of instance content on day 1. I just want to see dungeons in the story, straight up. Like I think that's when you get the perfect format. You have like a couple dungeons on day 1. But I don't know, if I compare this to like Sodo, you definitely have a point when you say like it feels a little bit light, but to me it feels like infinitely better than Sodo did, especially on day 1. Because
It's light
like
on
spears
content.
as well are coming on
I think
day
it's
1.
important to say it's light on content. Like that's what the specific
features are
part.
so
Feature wise,
Yeah.
it's really good. Like, you know, we're gonna go hopping around on the Warclaw. It's gonna be fun. Like spears are gonna be a really cool addition to the game, I think, as well. The homestead's gonna be a really solid addition to the kind of the feature, to the point where I agree with Sneb. It's gonna be hard to top that, right? Like I think that the amount of stuff they can add as a new feature, like, it's going to be difficult to come up with something that's kind of comparable to that, I think, in the next expansion, outside of simply extending the homestead and like continuing to iterate upon that. Not easy, I think, to do.
There's something we haven't talked about that I think is super important to note about homesteads. Think about prior expansions and what they released as features. I'm going to just use End of Dragons because I think it's a pretty easy example. They had the Jade bot. Do people use the Jade bot now? Yes, but they haven't expanded upon that feature at all. They just kind of left it. What about fishing? Well, they've added a few fishing holes here and there, but for the most part, it's not as relevant as it once was. Just think about all of these things where they've kind of built this whole system and then they slowly kind of let it go. Homesteads, it would not make sense at all to do that because it will be so financially good for them to just continue to build and build and build and customize. And it's the ultimate way for people to just to like create a space interior for themselves. So I think homesteads is finally a feature where they will constantly build upon it because it will be so easy to do so. They just add a new plot of land, add a new home, buy a home in the gem store, buy decorations in the gem store, earn a new decoration from a raid wing. Or you know what I mean? Like it's so easy to just continue to build upon that feature set. Whereas the other things, I think it was a little bit more complicated. Because it was either so niche, like I personally feel like fishing is pretty niche. You're kind of saying, okay, well, what are we going to do? Buy fishing rod skins? And I think that's kind of what they did. But otherwise, there wasn't a lot for them to monetize. So it's hard for them to continue building a feature that doesn't make them money. But homesteads will absolutely make them money.
And also, it's just a
Yeah.
feature that is inherently extensible as well, right? Like it's just, it just has that attached to it, built in, so it's like easy for them to keep updating it. Whereas, like, I guess they theoretically could keep updating something like the Jade bot, but it would be weird, to be
requires
honest. It wouldn't be that good.
Yeah, and it requires way more effort as well. And also, like, the homesteads give meaning to like everything in the game. Like everything that gets released, it'll just be, hey, I got a new weapon. I can put it on my statue on the homestead, and now it means more. And I'm gonna have another reason to actually farm it. So it's like not only it's that you can keep developing it, but like it's just way better for everything in the game as well, right? So yeah,
It's like already motivating me to do stuff because
Yeah.
I never cared about the home instance, right? I never cared about the nodes. I was like, gotta go to my home instance once a day and gather all of them. That sounds boring.
Yeah,
But now
it
suddenly
is.
I care, right? There's the like I have a reason to log out there because then I get like the nice rested bonus, and then like also there's gonna be the auto gathering thing, right? You'll be able
Right,
to like
yeah.
easily gather like all your notes like with basically there's gonna be one that's gonna gather like your whole mine at once, for example, right?
Yeah.
So already I'm kind of like chasing that stuff a bit. The thing though with homesteads is there's gonna be people who really care. That's me. But there are definitely gonna be players who don't care about it, right? There's gonna be some players who just
Like
it's just not their thing.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know that.
Noob.
Man.
Look, you know, I will actually. I'm gonna say it how it is. I think this is not even necessarily unintended. Like, I could definitely see ArenaNet look to make the launch of the expansion a bit heavier in terms of replayability. That might be a goal they have. We don't know explicitly, but I could imagine that. Like, for example, I think they'd be pretty happy if there was a legendary on launch, like the legendary spear that you could go after. I'd definitely be pretty happy about that as well. But I also think that the model that ArenaNet is going for here is a little bit different. It is very much, okay, this is what the year looks like for Guild Wars 2. There's going to be 4 patches. Which one do you want to log in for? I think that's kind of intentional in a way. I'm pretty sure. Well, look, let's not beat around the bush here. That's kind of the way the game's intended to be played, right? Like it's not supposed to be a game that like you fucking grind like 24 hours a day, like every single patch. That's just not what Guild Wars 2 is. It is very much like log in when there's something interesting, right? And I definitely think that Guild Wars 2 and Arena are leaning into their strength as a side game here. So, like, if you're a raider, like, you're probably not going to be playing Guild Wars 2 as a main game. You're going to play it as a side game, and you log in, then log back out. Like, you know, maybe you play it when you've got downtime in your main game, for example. And I think that's kind of what they're going for a lot as well, because I think that is a big strength of the game. Like, Guild Wars 2 does make a very good kind of side game, to be honest, especially if you're into the more replayable content style of stuff that I think other MMOs like have real strengths in. So I think that the way this is going is to an extent intentional, or rather not. It's not a bug; it's a feature of the way this is. Like, it's very intended to be like hop in, hop out, like when you've got the moment to do that, rather than necessarily providing a game that you can like completely go all in on. You obviously can do that if you want to, but it's not really kind of the intended use case for the game. Although I don't think there could be some improvements, right? Like if they drop a strike mission on launch, for example, of like the end boss of the story, that would be really cool. Maybe easier to make than a raid, right? Like as Lara said, if there's like a dungeon, right, that's attached to the raid that's kind of part of the story, that would be really cool as well, right? If there's a legendary spear on launch, that would be really, really cool. I'm kind of liking what they're doing. We kind of didn't bring this up yet, but maybe we did. But the quest they're dropping, right, in the Wizard's Vault, you go on a little adventure to get the spear, which is actually going to have a really cool like set bonus thing where like the spear will ignite if you've got the glove on. Really cool idea, actually, for a cosmetic there. So I think they're trying to do this kind of thing as well, but it might not necessarily be like an absolute deal-breaking goal for them because of the nature of I think what they're trying to do with the model.
Yeah, I
no,
mean,
feel like,
if you're like, oh, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what I was gonna say is that I feel like, yeah, the game is not supposed to be like played, forever or whatever. But like, if you really want that, especially if you like skins and things to like collect, I think it works pretty well, right? You don't have to do it, but it works. And I think this expansion does have, especially with homesteads, that amount of stuff. I also wanted to ask, like, do we know what the spear is actually gonna be like? Because like, I was thinking like maybe it could be like the precursor for the actual legendary spear, like the one we're getting from the quest line from the Wizard's Vault, and maybe that quest line that we're gonna have to do, that collection, will require some replayability of other maps and will lead us into the next patch very well. But I guess we don't really have that information, but it could work that way for sure.
Yeah, I think they've said there's gonna be like some parts that you can already work on for the legendary spear.
Yeah.
We don't really know what that means yet. I want Aurora basically. Like
Yes.
I loved like the
Yes.
Aurora quest and like the Vision quest and stuff, right? Like there were some parts that were a bit grindy. You know, Draconis Mons for 18 days in a row is maybe a little bit intense. But I love
Imagine
how
that. Maybe that's what the hearts are on launch. Maybe that's it.
maybe
18-day
they're bringing
time
back
gate.
Draconis
Enjoy
Mons,
that.
exactly.
It's back.
Oh my god.
It's back.
You talk to a
wondered
bear,
what
and the
is
bear
expansion,
puts you into
though.
an
Like-
alternate reality where you
The
must
bear-
go back to
the- you-
goddess moths.
The bear just gives you like, yeah, have this little piece of rock, okay? And then after
Have
18
this
days,
mushroom.
yeah, have this
This
mushroom. Yeah,
fungus.
just have this
Eat
little,
this fungus.
yeah, eat it.
Oh my gosh. No, but yeah, I want a long collection that takes me through the whole expansion. Like that was so fun with Aurora and Vision. That is. Here's the thing. I think it doesn't matter for ArenaNet that much if like some people buy the expansion later, right? Doesn't really matter if some people like let's
Yeah.
say you're a raider, you only care about raids. They probably don't care if you don't buy the expansion now.
Yeah.
They just care if you will then buy it once the raid comes out, right?
Yeah.
I
think that's something they've
But-
thought about, and that I think it's almost like an intentional, not exactly intentional, but it's like that's a perfectly valid way of playing, of enjoying the product, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
the important thing, right? Like if you don't really want anything on launch, then just don't play on launch. I will say this though, and I think this is relatively niche, and I'm actually really curious. I'm curious like how many people kind of are looking for this. Like something that I love about MMOs is that kind of launch experience, like the meta experience of like, yeah, let's just get in there, right? Like everyone's like
Yeah.
surging into the game, like
Mhm.
we're finding everything, right? We're figuring out everything, we're farming like crazy, right? That's a really fun experience, right? Like that's why so many people are always like, I want a new MMO, give me a new MMO, I want a fresh MMO, right? People are obsessed with like, oh yeah, give me a new server, give us classic, right? Give us this, give us that, right? So you can have that meta experience there, and that is something that I think can be lacking potentially with this model, because I do think
Yeah.
playing an MMO on launch is really special, right? I think it's really special to actually do that. It really is not the same as buying a game 3 months into its cycle. It is not the same at all. It's a completely different social experience to playing it through on launch. And I definitely want to kind of, I would love to see ArenaNet kind of recapture the Griffin, the Dragon's End, for example, for kind of two things on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? Where you have that exploration of finding the Griffin was so fucking hype, right? And then you also have on the other side, you know, you've got the, you know, Dragon's End, people figuring out how to beat that, or Dragon's Stand, right? Or people figuring out how to do legendary collections as well, when those dropped as well. That's also so exciting, I think.
Yeah, it's fairly on the legendary, right? That if that would have gone on release, it would have been fine, because the raids isn't really that big of a deal. Like everyone's gonna be hyped for like the raids and how to do them when they launch, and that's probably why they didn't want the Convergence to be on launch, because otherwise we're gonna know exactly what to do. But if the legendary was on release, it would have been perfect, right, in that regard. But maybe we get like a little precursor to go for, and we have to, you know, figure all this out as well. And hopefully, whatever the reward is, because like, yeah, it's nice to like preemptively farm everything, but if you don't get a little bit of reward after that, it kind of feels like, what's the point? And I feel that's kind of what happened with the Obsidian armor on Soto for sure.
Yeah, it was like you can farm rifts and get currency, but it's not very satisfying. It's just
Yeah,
like,
like,
oh yeah,
okay.
I got it ready, you know.
I got the
It's
answer.
definitely more
armor.
satisfying
Oh
if it's
my
like I have the precursor ready to go. Like
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it's a bit easier because it's gonna be just a weapon instead of like a whole set of medium, heavy, and light, right? So maybe this will work. We'll see.
I have a feeling they'll learn from the whole relic fiasco, though. Let's go back in time to when the relic happened with the relic being the legendary relic. I
Yeah.
had this expectation, and maybe it was just totally misaligned or wrong or whatever. But when they said that there was going to be a legendary relic, I started hoarding materials. I started like farming the maps more. I started like thinking about how a sort of something kind of Aurora-esque. I thought there were going to be achievements to do. And then they were like, actually, we're giving it to you for free. And I was like, oh, wait, do I want it for free? And I had this moment where I thought, no, actually, I kind of want to pay for it. Like, I kind of want to earn it. I want to go and do the things required to earn the legendary relic.
Yeah.
It was really anticlimactic to me that suddenly it's like, what's that meme? Is it the Obama meme where they're just like putting the medal on himself?
With
or
the
whatever?
ego? Oh yeah, like the ego emote. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I just look at me. I'm really good with this legendary relic. It just felt kind of awkward. And so I think that they'll probably do it a little bit differently in Janthir Wilds. I suspect that they'll have you go and earn things. And I know with it, funnily enough, with the relic, my understanding is that you actually have to go and unlock all the other relics now. And I think that journey is really exciting. I think having achievements, having things to do that impact your gameplay later is kind of fun. It's kind of fun.
Yeah,
We're gonna do more work for our legendary relic like on Tuesday than we did to actually get the legendary relic.
Yeah.
That was a good thing that they learned there, 100% actually. And yeah, I do hope that they kind of continue to iterate on the ability to pre-grind stuff. I think, you know, look, I'm gonna be that guy. Sneb kind of said it. I think everyone kind of said it here, but I'll reiterate it. It is weird to me that you can basically pre-grind the essence for the legendary. That is weird. I mean, they're obviously continuing the currency, and I actually do respect that a lot. I like what they've gone with that, actually, with the fact that they're not making another new currency. This is something they're obviously concerned about, right? Is like the bloat in the game. The thing is, they could maybe improve this because they have like a current expansion version and an legacy content version, basically, for a lot of currencies. For example, you have the blue and green shards from strikes that are going on there. You have the other one is ancient coins and unusual coins. Unusual coins are from the current expansion, and then ancient coins are from older expansions, right? So I feel like systems like that are pretty good. So you can't pre-grind stuff, so that, you know, you do actually have like a loads of stuff to actually do in like all of the new content, as opposed to kind of being able to like pre-complete it in the older content as well, which is a bit weird. I guess you could argue that in a way you already can do this. So, because think about it, right? Like, you know, oh my god, guys, I think the new legendary might need Mystic Clovers and Ectos. Oh no, I'm gonna get banned for market manipulation. I'm leaking. Guys, I am leaking.
He's leaking information.
My account.
Yeah.
Oh my god, what am I gonna do?
Didn't people do that with EOD? And then like there were barely any Mystic coins needed because she only needed like 33, and then coins like crashed.
Yeah.
Often prize on like EOD launch week. Like, oh my god.
I had so many coins, it was horrible.
And they might try and shake it up. Like, who knows? Maybe the hearts give you Mystic coins, right? They just like boom, and then it's over. Like Mystic coins are just worthless again. That could definitely happen.
I think it's probably okay to pre-grind the stuff as long as you get the reward from it, though. I think that's fine. I think the problem is whenever you stack it and you just like have the materials in your bank and you're just like waiting until the patch releases. I think that's kind of meme.
Yeah, like just that step where you craft it together, you know?
Exactly.
Like, yeah. Feels better.
I think as long as the kind of sequence, the collection in the new content's got some real meat to it, I think it's going to be fun. Right at the end of the day, that's kind of like what needs to happen. Yeah. Like, you know, that's the important thing.
I don't want to just grind currency and craft. Like, I want a journey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, and Soda doesn't really do that. Maybe a little bit. Like, you needed to have like the armors, I think, before you could craft the legendary armor. So there was a little bit of that involved.
But it didn't feel that way. It just didn't. Right, and like I feel like that's what happens sometimes. They know what they need to do, but whenever you do it, it just doesn't feel like the journey. It just doesn't feel like it's enough, even if the intention is there. So they just need to, you know, cook up a bit more, and then they'll be fine.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see.
I think one of the best parts. I think one of the best parts about MMORPGs and having items and this sort of idea of progressing and making your character more powerful, even if it's not necessarily through stats, but just by gaining new things, is that you're also gaining new experiences. You're gaining a story to tell, a journey to share. And that was really lost with the relic. You didn't have a journey to share. You're like, bro, I just got like mailed this relic one day, you know, but it would have been, I think things like Aurora, like we talk, 18-day time gates or whatever. But you know what? That's a shared experience that we all have.
You can
Like,
you can still see people having that experience in map chat to this day if you go to Draconis mods. Yeah, you'll see someone like, I'm free, like when they finish it, when they get to they're linking like the druid backpack. Okay, that's probably not the best way to do it, to be fair, but you get the point. I know what you're saying.
We're all in this together.
Yeah, exactly.
It's this idea that when somebody's doing Aurora, you're like, oh man, I remember doing Aurora. You're gonna have to go through this like insane time gate, and you're gonna have to go this journey. You're gonna get all these items, all this, and suddenly you look like that guy who's like pointing at the map with like all the connected dots or whatever, like the meme. But it's fun, right? It's fun that you all have this shared experience, something to talk about, something that unites the community. Even not every part of an experience has to be resoundingly positive either. It can be a bit of a grind. People go, oh man, that was such a grind. It was like so difficult to get through. But you know what? We did it. We got through it together. The community united. We did the hearts or whatever it was in Draconis mods, right?
I will say though, Obsidian Armor definitely succeeded there with the rifts. So I think, they have something in there. Oh man, but that probably wasn't the best way of doing it. That was definitely not the best way of doing it. But yeah, I agree. I think it's sometimes okay to have like one specific spot that is like absolutely painful, so you remember the entire, and like then you remember all the good things about it too, and you can wear your Aurora or whatever item that you need that you have, and be like, damn, I did it.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
I'm about to say the most base thing ever. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, it's time.
It's
time.
Right.
Here we go.
Chalice of Tears, actual good content because everyone hates it. It's
True.
Perfect.
It's
perfect. Good because it's actually painful.
I wouldn't say it's good because it's terrible, but
I said because it's a little bit painful, not because it's terrible. Yeah. It's good. It's a good jumping puzzle. It's hard, and people like camp characters places. There's people that are known for being jumping puzzle experts that go in and help people get through it. It's the people create like little trains where they're walking through it and helping guide people. That creates content. It creates community. It creates people talking to each other. And I actually think that's fine. Look, I loathe the jumping puzzle entirely. I loathe it because I'm so bad at it. And it's very frustrating. But I think there are people who are very good at it that can help me do it. And that builds community. And it's fun. It's fun to have experiences where maybe you do need to unite together a little bit and figure it out. But everyone remembers that jumping puzzle because it's something that's a little bit challenging. It's something that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to have things like that. I don't think everything in the game should be like that, but I think it's good to have something that has a memorable story, a journey tied to it, one that united players together, one that brings people to talk about something. I think far too often we have things that are just like, oh yeah, I just like showed up and it was done.
You see, this is why the overall feature set, we've kind of been a little critical, I think, of the launch kind of feature in terms of like the storytelling, in terms of the replayability. We've been critical of that, and I think that criticism is warranted. To be clear, I'm not trying to simp, here for Guild Wars 2. Everyone knows I hate the game, but this is why I'm a little bit excited actually for the features after launch, especially the Convergence CMs, because look, this is going to be the most cope statement ever, but I actually think it's not that cope if we actually look at the evidence of what happened in Soto. I think the Convergences and the Convergence challenge modes, I think, can be an awesome shared experience to have with people, because one, we already know that ArenaNet has said they're making the Convergences harder. They specifically said that, by the way, which is a very they specifically said that. And also, they made Umbriel, by the way. Here's actually... Yeah. Look, Umbriel is... And they didn't nerf him as well. Umbriel is not nerfed. Okay, and he's actually so hard on CM that there are, like, almost daily Reddit posts, like, begging for mercy, right? Pretty much with Umbriel CM, right? At this point.
There's a problem with Umbriel, though. Yeah. There is a problem. The problem is that Umbriel's rewards are not unique. That's the big problem.
Yeah, sure.
So there's very little reason for you to do Umbriel if you can just do like Demon Knight or whatever.
I think that's going to be less of an issue though with the raid, because it's going to. I assume the Convergence is going to be like the same. I mean, well, no, we know this actually. The Convergence will follow the story of the raid, but because it is the raid, right? Like we know that now. That was confirmed again on this show, guys. Oh my god. Yeah. So yeah, we know this is the case. So I think that's probably gonna be less an issue because they basically all the bosses are gonna be like bundled together in a way. We assume that's the case anyway. With how it's gonna operate.
Yeah, I think that's good. It's right now the reason that people complain about Umbriel is because the shared experience is kind of lost because look, somebody like me, I've done it a few times with my community on launch, but now I go, it's a lot of effort to set up a group for that, and it's going to take me a really long time. Do I really want to do that when it is identical as far as rewards and half the time to do Demon Knight? And the answer is, maybe if I'm bothered about it enough by people, I'll probably do it. But otherwise, I won't. But if it's something like one of the Strike CMs, like KO CM or whatever, there's unique drops from that. So it just feels like it's more useful to do, I guess. Well, they're kind of unique, I guess, because there's currency and stuff. But you get the picture. It's more worth it to do things that have some unique flair to them, some unique rewards. And I would also argue that Umbriel to me is bordering on not just difficult, but annoying. It's not that it's super hard, it's that it's just annoying. And I think that's important to say. I think it's fun, but the setup for it and getting enough people, I would much prefer that. Oh, actually, this could be a bit of a hot take, but I actually would prefer that Convergences do have different modes.
Like scaling, basically? Yeah.
Yeah, because there are times when it is very difficult to get 50 people who have the level of preparedness and experience to do a challenge like Umbriel. And I'm just going to be honest, people. If I have a couple hours to play the game, I don't want to spend half of that preparing a group for Umbriel. I don't find that part of it very fun. So if we can make that part of it better, then I think that it's probably fine. But all of the setup required, making sure, look, mark your bingo cards, people. I'm just going to say it. There's just not enough, squad UI and stuff to really help make it organized enough. Having to double check every subgroup to make sure there are boons in it. And then if you're doing multiple convergences, like half the squad leaves, and you have to reset and completely redo all of the boons. That sucks. It's not fun at all to have to play like micromanager organizer on every subgroup the entire time. But the actual content is pretty good. So make it so that it's not as hard to get in there, and it'll be way better.
Yeah, I mean, if they make it more boss focused, I think they have the potential to do that, right? I think the reason why Convergences are, you kind of want 50 people for them, and why they didn't bother making them scale, I think, is because you have to do all like the spread. You have to like spread out into like 4 different locations, right, to like kill the champions and stuff. Right. So it's kind of like that's the way they went in that direction, because like doing that with say 10 people is going to be super awkward to do that basically. So I think they have more potential to do that, and I definitely agree, right? Like the thing you're talking about here, they need to make the encounter design good, right? And that wasn't exactly a strength of Soto overall, if we're being honest here. So yeah, like they definitely need to design some really good encounters, and I think the world bosses, we're not going to hear about the raid for a while. But
I don't hate the encounter design of Umbriel. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. I'm saying the lead up to be able to go in and do the encounter is not very fun.
Yeah, and I think like scalability is going to be good for that, for sure. Like, and I hope they do that. That will be good, because then you can kind of do like your 10-man. Like you do with Dragonstorm, you can do like your 10-man convergence, right? Because I mean, Dragonstorm is basically a convergence, right, in a way. At this point, with that type of content.
But even then, though, I'm a little bit conflicted about that too, because one of the good selling points of Convergences is that it's big group instance content. I actually think that's a huge selling point. It's very unique. We don't have a lot of other content like that. And so if suddenly it was doable with 10 people, I don't think people would ever do it with 50, or would very seldom do it with 50 on the CMs. Because why would you?
Yeah, maybe that's okay on CM, though. Maybe that's okay on CM.
But like,
I don't know, but the selling point is that it's like a big raid.
Well, but then there's normal mode for that, no?
Maybe. I don't know. That's why I'm a little bit conflicted. I'm not sure what to think exactly.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because like I think we'll get challenging 10-man content regardless in the raid version, right? Yeah. Again, it's sort of the same event between the Convergence and the race. So like, on one hand, having really hard 50-man content is kind of badass, right? Like again, it can be a nightmare.
Dragons
to organize. It can
End.
be a nightmare to organize.
We need-
But I mean,
yeah.
that's I love how they're doing challenge modes for it. I think that's so good because that means that they can actually go hard on that difficulty a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it
But
gives
yeah,
them-
Sneb
it
is totally
gives
right.
them-
There needs to be a reason to do it beyond the first time. Because we
Yeah,
were
yeah.
all motivated to do Umbriel CM in the first week because it was like, oh, you can get the title if you get them all, right? Like you needed it for the title. But now that we have the title, we don't really care anymore. So there needs to be something that keeps you doing that challenge modes and keeps you organizing it and makes it worth it.
Yeah,
I think.
the
Have
only
you
way
ever
that
looked
I
at Guild
did
Wars
it-
2 efficiency about the title?
No.
This is wild. Somebody should check right now. I don't have it up, but I
Well, we
checked. It
can.
was like a
The
The
month or two
API is
back.
dead. We literally can't. It's
Oh
okay.
yeah, we can't.
Oh,
Okay, so
sure.
I'll give you outdated information then.
Okay.
So I checked. It was a while ago, and there actually weren't that many more people that had the Convergence champion title versus legendary Saris kill.
Ooh.
It's pretty
For
difficult.
real.
Well, you know, there might be a couple of extenuating circumstances that might have modified the legendary Saris, to be fair. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Like the fact that it's even close is insane. But yeah,
Well, that actually should reinforce my argument even further, Teapot, because what we're saying is that it's so difficult to get into an Umbriel Gold group that it's actually easier for these extenuating circumstances in LCM. Isn't that a little bit problematic? I don't know. It's pretty wild. I think when I checked, it was like, and this is a long time ago now, so I'm really curious what the ratio would be now. But it was like 2-1. So for every two people that
that's
had Convergence
crazy.
champion, one
That is
had.
what?
That's wild because we're talking about the hardest encounter in the game versus Umbriel.
Yeah.
And I believe, this is just my opinion, but I believe this is purely a difficulty in organizing a group. Okay,
Yeah.
it's not pure. It's a little bit hyperbolic, but a major component of this is that it's just difficult to get a group. It's difficult to organize a group. Commanders don't necessarily want to organize a group all the time. I know streamers like Kiyoshi used to do it quite a bit, but now it's harder and harder and harder to fill the entire group. I think Kiyoshi had the same problem that I was having, where I would try to do it, but I would only get like 30 people. And you literally just can't do it with 30. You need the full group to be able to get gold.
Yeah,
no,
the only
I mean,
reason
yeah.
why I've been able to do it is because I've been having the medicine before, and I'm actually
Yeah, then you
saying,
feed
guys,
it.
if you do more
Yeah.
damage, and you say, guys, if you do more damage than me, I'll pay you. You know, I'll give you some gold, so you
Yeah,
guys have
yeah.
an incentive. Because otherwise, nobody just chill out. And if Umbriel fails, it's like, well, these guys didn't do any damage. It's like, well, whatever, right? And Umbriel is very hard for me too, so it's pretty fucked. It's hard.
I mean,
I
50
think
people,
lost
Demon
50
Knight, I
people
mean.
is a lot.
Yeah.
Like 50
a
people
lot of
is a
people.
lot of
Mm.
people. It absolutely is.
It is.
It is.
And it is going to be like an activity. Look, I don't know. I feel like for stuff like that to work, you do almost have to have a bit of a community around it. Like it kind of reminds me of Triple Trouble in a way, right? Like Triple Trouble. Even now, I feel like I think Triple Trouble is in some ways like more extreme than Umbriel. Like if you have like a random group of people who don't know what to do, I feel like you're almost certainly dead on Triple Trouble,
Well,
right?
no,
'Cause
but,
you
but
need
it's
to
for
understand
very
how it
different
works.
reasons. It's very different reasons. The problem with Umbriel is that not only do you have to be organized, but you also have to be very skilled at the game mechanically.
We have to press buttons,
And-
yeah. Which is not. We don't have to press
Well-
buttons for Triple Trouble, not really, anyway.
No, you don't.
No, right? Like
Some is good,
Triple
right?
Trouble, you only have to be coordinated and
Yeah.
organized, which is still a skill in itself and is still difficult to do. But the difficulty is very different when you're saying, okay, well, now you need to be organized and we need you to have proper boons. We need you to have proper subgroups. We need you to follow those directions so that you get those boons. And we need you to do a rotation so that you're doing enough damage. That's where it becomes very difficult. So if Convergences were more about coordination, like Triple Trouble, rather than skill, I actually don't even know if I'd be that angry, but I think that's why Dragon's End was so unique, right? There was a very light DPS check. We're talking like 5-6K, but it was mostly about mechanics and organization.
I actually think Umbriel is harder than Dragon's End. For sure. I'd say significantly harder at this point, actually. Not even
Yeah.
close. But
Yeah.
you know what? Okay. When the only way to get the turtle was Dragon's End, guess what happened? I had 50 people in voice, 50 people willing to change their builds, 50 people willing to do what I want them to do. And I'm not saying they should do exclusive rewards behind the Convergence CM, by the way, but if that right now, Convergence CMs are actually some of the best gold in the game. I think it's like 80, 90 gold per hour. It's actually wild, by the way, guys. If you know how to get gold out of it, it's basically the highest gold per hour that you can do. Outside of like really extreme stuff. But I tell you what, if that Convergence CM drops and if Umbriel, let's say, gave 50% more loot, I feel like people would actually do it. Right, I think that this is like the thing is, right, is that if you do Umbriel, there's like a non-zero chance that you lose and get nothing. And bear in mind, the person who and I think the convergence system kind of works against you here a little bit, because bear in mind, the person who opens that convergence has to pay 9 gold, or like 5 to 9 gold, depending on the price of the thingy, right? Across the board. So you're paying 6 gold. You would be an imbecile to not pick the Demon Knight. Right, like that's the thing here. Like if you are gonna bet your 6 gold and get nothing in return if you fail Umbriel, there's just no way. Like the risk or reward there, it does not exist. You're a fool if you go that direction. So I definitely agree with Sneb that 50 people is a lot. Finding 50 people who can pump and are willing to kind of engage, yeah, that's non-trivial for sure to do that. But I also think there's just no incentive, right? Like and it's actually, you're like disincentivized to doing it as well, because you get punished if you fail, right? It's not just that you lose and get nothing, you negative gold yourself, right? You have to pay for the unstable motivation, right?
It's not even the gold for me. Like I like doing convergence CMs on my stream because they're, like you said, they're really good gold per hour. But it also just feels bad to lose. And like, if I'm gonna get 50 people in there, I want them to win. I want them to
it feels so sad.
Yeah, well, it's even worse because if you're the commander there and you lose,
they'll blame the commander.
Not only did you have to spend all of that time organizing the group, but when you lose, they will not self-reflect. They will blame you. It is your fault because you were the leader, and you probably had to pay to get in there. So you paid 7 gold to lose and have everyone at least a little bit disappointed in you, and that doesn't feel good.
I mean, okay, the real issue is just that you've got like convergence, right? You've got convergence CM, which gives more rewards, and people are doing those, right? They want those more rewards. But then Umbriel is a significant step
up. Way harder,
without giving you anything compared to the other CMs, right? So that's a huge part of the issue, I think. I think if Umbriel was the only CM that was available, I'm not saying they should do this, but just if it were,
do it.
I think lots more people would be doing it. I think there'll be much more of a community around it. People would be like, I want that gold per hour. Right?
Oh, you're 100%
right. Yeah. Because I think it really is all about community here, right? Like if you put something difficult, people will beat it. Like people beat Dragon's End when it was pre-nerf and it was much harder, and it was definitely comparable to Umbriel in terms of difficulty. Probably even a little bit harder because it has like more mechanical complexity, right? Than Umbriel. Obviously, there's a lot more going on Dragon's End. People will 100% beat it. Like if you have that, and a community will form around this kind of stuff. I think, improvements to squad UI should happen. Improvements to the reward structure should happen. And I think it's funny, actually. I think that the kind of thing that you guys are talking about, I think is very, very true. And it points to like an issue with how rewards work in Guild Wars 2 in general. Like the very, very all or nothing. Like, wiping on Umbriel at 1% is the same as wiping at 99%, right? But those two performances are not the same, right? Like not even close. Like, if you die before the boss is like sub 90, then that's obviously you haven't done as well as if you get to like 5% or whatever, but you get the exact same reward for that, which is nothing, by the way. They should probably look at that. Like if you really give it a really good try and you get to, let's say 20%, you should probably get something for that, right? As opposed to literally nothing, and you just get thrown out, like disposed of, back into the Wizard's Tower.
To bring this back to Janthir HYPE for a second, this is something they have to think about. Because like if they do a really cool convergence CM for Janthir HYPE, right? Again, we're thinking there probably won't be multiple bosses you pick through. We're thinking there will be one like Janthir convergence experience, like normal mode and CM. But we do know it's going to be the same currency, the same like shards as from Sodo. So like if it turns out that that Janthir convergence CM is really cool, but it's really hard, but there's no exclusive rewards from it, it will be the same as Umbriel. People will be like, "Whoa, this is awesome, and we're gonna do it the first week." and then we're gonna just fight Demon Knight again because it's the same shards, right? The same essences that you get. So if anyone from ArenaNet is listening, we need like an infusion or something. We need like a cool drop.
Infusion, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be nice, too.
Yes.
Just for the psychological. I might get
Gamba.
envision and will never get it.
Gamba,
maybe.
Gamba, it's
That would be nice.
time. It's time. Yeah.
Full Gamba.
Should Convergences kick
Maybe
you
it's
out
nice
if
to
you
go
fail?
back.
Should you have the option to throw another motivation and restart the boss you think you can manage? That's actually a really good point, actually, because that kind of feeds
Oh, no.
into what Sneb was talking about. One thing that's like really difficult, and why I think that there was someone brought up that Kiyoshi was used to do this stuff, but and a lot of commanders used to do like full CM trains, but it gets kind of like really draining when okay, we beat it, then you leave the instance, a bunch of people leave, and you got to get back in, and then you kind of like rinse and repeat, right? Like you lose people every single time. I think that would happen definitely less if you did have the ability to immediately restart, as opposed to getting like completely thrown out of the instance there as well. So that's definitely kind of like an interesting bit of quality of life that I think could actually be really useful. It could be really useful to that, I think.
And in some ways, I feel like it would be nice if you actually succeed, the commander, the person that opened the instance, maybe gets the motivation back. I feel like that would
Yeah.
be nice, right? Like, come on, like, why not? Like, I paid,
Yeah.
please just give it to me
It
back.
honestly would be pretty cool if there was a system like that, because ultimately that's kind of how rifts work, right? Like if you'd get way less rewards unless you also use a motivation there as well. So like, yeah, maybe the commander, and that would be kind of nifty, right? It would kind of encourage people to tag up for this stuff. If you're actually like, getting motivated to do this, half motivated, right?
Oh boy.
Good. Guys,
What a
stop to
knee
MightyTeapot
slapper.
right now. He
Yeah.
deserves it
Yeah,
for that.
Prime.
Subscribe
Prime,
now.
gifted subs, tier billion. Let's go. It's time. Use the referral link. Not anyone else is here. Okay, like just don't use those. Okay, but anyway, yeah, I agree. We need to re-rail. Okay, Darens,
I have a
re-rail
thought.
us. Okay, wait, Sneb's got
I
a
have
thought.
a
Sneb
re-rail. I
re-rail
will
us.
re-rail.
Good, very nice.
I will also this kind of shifts slightly, but I think it's also along the same lines. I was talking before about how events when you're a commander are most fun when it's more about cooperative gameplay necessarily than making sure that it's perfect from a subgroup standpoint, from a boon standpoint. I much prefer when I'm doing 50+ person content that it's more so about, can I get people to go into the right spots rather than, do my people all have big enough weapons to be able to do this? Like, do they all have insane DPS rotations? Because I can't know that. So it's much better if I know, okay, if I have the right people in the right spots, then I think we can do this. And I would argue that Eparch is actually a good display of this as well. Eparch is painful because if you don't have people that are doing damage, it takes forever. And so it's less about, do I have people, are they going to the right spots? And more about, do I have enough people that can do damage? What I would like to see in Janthir Wilds from whatever the new boss is going to be, I would like to see a cooperative gameplay experience. I would like to see a commander going, okay, maybe we actually need 2 tags. Maybe one has to go west and one has to go east, and we need to time killing these bosses together. And then when we're done that, well, we need to make sure that we spread out in such and such a way and coordinate. I think that's way more satisfying and way more fulfilling and way better of a gameplay experience, because then if you do more damage, it's a bonus because you're going to kill the boss faster and thus get more rewards per hour. So I would like to see it matter that you're doing damage, but not be like the only way that you should judge people joining your group. I want to play with new players and encourage them to increase their damage so that the event will fail less and be faster, but I don't want it so that I go into an Eparch situation where it's like, look, if we don't have like 15 people, just full rotation for 10 minutes, the boss is not dying.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like you make it so you get rewarded for bigger damage, but you don't fail if you don't do the insane amount of damage.
I want to fail because we sucked at communicating and we had bad coordination, not because we could not convince the new players who just bought the game 6 days ago to go onto the TP and buy berserker armor that they couldn't afford. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean,
Because-
look, okay,
because-
I think that whoa, in the open world, I actually want to move all this topic. I think this is kind of.
I'm talking about open world specifically. I'm not talking about the convergent CMs anymore.
Yeah.
I'm talking about
Open world, yeah,
specifically.
sure. But I think that's kind of the point of the convergent CM, right? The convergent CM is to basically have a space where there's kind of room for a little bit of both, right? I think that's like a part of the design there. Is that is you're going to have to press buttons to beat that. But yeah, in open world, I think button pressing should essentially be optional at this point.
Yes,
I think
that's
it's
where I
also
was going with
because,
that.
because that's something that, like, I guess that's our perspective a bit, right? Like, we all command things in open worlds. And, like, that's something that we as commanders cannot affect, right? We cannot affect
Yeah.
easily how much damage you do. We cannot do something and then bam, the whole squad does awesome damage. But what we can do is coordinate people, right?
Yep.
That is
exactly.
something where, like, we are sort of in control and we can go like, yo, this subgroup, you gotta go do that, you gotta go do that. Like, right? That's something that's much more in our actual control. So it's a more fun experience to command. But again, I do agree that if there's one place where, like, you know, the also DPS check is there, it should be in the instanced challenge mode content, right? Something like Convergent
Correct.
CM. Like, you're signing up for that, right? Like, that's not something that you want to throw people into immediately, but it's cool that it exists, right? I love that Umbriel exists, genuinely. Like, to me, Umbriel is my favorite Convergence boss, which some people will probably say is a little bit of a hot take maybe, but it's the most memorable one, right? I've got the most memories, like when we just won and when we just lost.
Yes.
Like, it brings those emotions, right?
I think that's only natural, right? When you have something that has actual stakes, when there's actual a way to lose, like, you know, like having a certain level of risk is pretty important, I think. You know, to have in the game.
We need to re-rail. That was not a re-rail.
Yeah, we
Sneb.
need to. Sneb,
Good
nice
re-rail.
job,
That was a good
Sneb.
re-rail.
How was that a good re-rail, dude?
I was taking us to the world boss in Janthir Wilds.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
right.
Oh, we should
And
definitely
like
talk
what we're
about-
expecting for
It looks
mechanics
cool.
and what we hope that it'll be
Yeah.
like for the community. And I was saying that I would like it so that it's more focused on coordination,
Right,
and bringing the
okay.
community together rather than focusing really hard on DPS checks. That's what I was
Have we
saying.
all seen Bloom's video?
Yes.
Where we get to see the world boss a bit. I like what they're doing with the mount, right? The past couple metas, they've been doing the thing where it's like, get on your turtle and spam your 1 button, or get on your sky skill
Tunnel.
and spam your 2 button, right? Which is pretty cool the first time you do it. It's like, let's go, like, I'm on my turtle, this feels really cool. But it gets stale so quickly, right? It gets stale very, very quickly just spamming 1 button. It looks like this time there is a moment where you gotta get on your Warclaw and you gotta, like, press your button, but you gotta, like, move and, like, dodge AoE at the same time and stuff. It looks cool. I'm pretty excited to see what that's
I
like.
think so. And I think the biggest thing about the mount gimmick is just to have it in one specific spot. You do it, and then you go back to the actual combat. I think that's the problem they had, like with Amnetas or whatever, right? In a lot of the solo metas, that would just be there
Overused it
for
a bit.
way too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's fun if you're just like go in, boop, and then go back, and then go back, and maybe they need to. Actually, is there a mastery that makes you be able to get back in the Warclaw in combat? Because it probably is gonna be.
They
They
needed.
probably will, yeah. They'll probably need that, or maybe they'll have like some kind of thing that you can interact with that will automate. You kind of like the sky scale launches, so they'll have something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there'll be some
Yeah,
method for that, for sure.
Yeah.
I think.
Otherwise, it's gonna be annoying. But yeah, I think it looks cool. It looks very cool.
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
like that
excited.
idea actually. You know, I think they definitely learned from the, you know, pressing 1 on the turtle and sky scale. Not really that much fun. To be
It
honest.
probably would have been fine if the actual pressing 1 would have been fun, but like it's just so slow and like I don't know. I
Yeah.
think they kind of memed there. They kind of memed, but yeah, I agree. I think it's gonna be
It
good.
looks like we might get what you were talking about, Sneb, right? Like, apparently it's gonna be 2 world bosses that have to be killed around the same time.
That's what
So
I
it
thought.
looks
would
like
be
there
good.
might be some. Yeah, look. Honestly, it reminded me a lot of Triple Trouble. Like hearing Bloom
Love
talk about
Triple
it,
Trouble.
right?
Yeah.
I think that'd be super cool. But then there's like an article that mentions a 3rd world boss as well.
Yeah.
Whoa!
So
they do?
it's a bit of a mystery. Like, is it gonna be separate world bosses? Like, there's 2 that are a pair and then 1 is separate, or maybe the 2 lead into a 3rd one or something. It's it sounds exciting though.
Yeah, I did think about this a little bit. I think it makes more sense if it's a separate world boss because they're trying to make the content more bite-sized. I think that's why they didn't go with meta events. They wanted to have like, oh yeah, they didn't want to have a situation where you're doing something for like half an hour, right? And you have to kind of block that out and do like a meta event for half an hour. So I think the bosses are going to be relatively quick fire, I think, and probably on separate timers as well. You know, we know there's White Mantle there as well, so you know, like it could be like a White Mantle, like a construct or something like that, something of that nature that's kind of on the lurking around there, all that kind of stuff. Of course, there's a bunch of Titans. Could be another Titan situation too.
I'm gonna make a prediction. My prediction is that we're gonna fight keep constructs in open worlds.
Oh, that would be really cool, actually. That would be good.
Cool.
That would be really good.
Popped into my head.
That
would be cool.
Why?
Let's go. Wait.
Wait, why would we fight keep construct in open world?
I mean, why not?
Because like we've seen like the sort of White Mantle architecture, right? We've seen like Bloodstone stuff, so it fits into architecture. That's really the idea. I like the model. You know, they just have that still laying around. Could do something cool with it. Yes. Keep construct 2.0.
Yeah. I'm definitely interested to see like the world boss design. I feel like we haven't seen a lot of the mechanical design of the world bosses yet. We know you have that kind of Warclaw mechanic, but I hope there's something a little bit more to them as well. One thing that concerns me is they don't move. We saw them in combat and it kind of spins around and won't like move around and like chase people and stuff, which I think is a bit unfortunate. And I do hope there is like a mechanic that happens. When I say a mechanic, I mean something that isn't just like an AoE that gets fired at you. It's something like, oh yeah, you need to go and kill the tail, right? On Suwon, for example. Like, oh, you need to do the triple trouble mechanics. Like they each have different things that you need to do to break through, right? With the harpoons or the bombs, right? Or like the gas clouds, right? Or something like Dragon Stand, where you have to, go to the 3 islands, right? You have to pick up the bomb and like throw it. Well, you kind of don't even do that anymore, but power creep, man, unbelievable. Or the Octovine, right? Where each Octovine has its own little puzzle that you have to do. I really hope there's stuff like that on the fight as well, because that's kind of leans into what Sneb was talking about, like the coordination aspect of it, where you all have to work together to complete some objective. I feel that world bosses, when they just fire AoEs at you, it's almost... it is what it is. Like, that's. I think they can do a little bit better than that, and I hope they do. To be honest, because there are some like really great world bosses out there, and I hope they go all in, right? Because they haven't made the meta event, and I think I was hoping for a meta event. I do like that kind of thing. I like the kind of epic thematic storytelling of like moving through, kind of like the story unfolding before you in the meta event. But I don't mind a world boss too. There's some classics. I played the core game recently. I've got some appreciation for that. But yeah, I hope they really go all in on it and make it like a really interesting world boss that we have to figure out. Like again, this is my benchmark. If we can't beat it first try, I'll be happy, right? And I want to be clear, that's not the same thing as saying it's really, really hard for people who aren't tryhards. What I mean is I want there to be something that we have to figure out that we can't get first time. Right, so like a knowledge check.
Tail.
Yeah, just like the tail, or just like triple trouble, right? As well. So again, I will be really clear. I'm not saying slap a DPS check on. I'm not saying make it super mechanically challenging, right? So like only the most elite gamer can clear it. I want it to be like a little puzzle or a little knowledge check that isn't immediately obvious. Like if they do that, I'm happy, honestly, with these world bosses.
Yeah, I wonder if they're trying to, because like it is weird, very weird for me that it's just gonna be a world boss and nothing else. Because they could have put like a little bit of an escort, and like who cares? It's still a meta. But it almost feels like they just want to remake the meta formula because it hasn't worked in Soto, and they're trying to like figure out what is the actual thing that people want, trying to make this world bosses, right? So we'll definitely, hopefully everybody likes it, right? For sure. I'm definitely.
I think there will. I think there will be like little pre-events and stuff. It's probably not just because like randomly spawn, right? That would just be like like a giant Titan like randomly spawns. But I think the meta event kind of thing means they're probably not going to be central to the main story. Is the guess I would make, because think about the Soto metas, like especially Skywatch, and especially Inanios. If you don't play the metas on Skywatch and Inanios, the actual main story of the game doesn't make sense, right? Like that's actually reality. Then they don't want that to be the case. So you can kind of play through the story and like just by exploring through the world, and then almost like the stuff that's in the open world, like the events and stuff. That's almost world building, right? As opposed to the central thrust of the story. It's going to be relevant, obviously, but it's going to be, you won't need to play it in order for the actual main storyline of the game to make sense. I think it's going to be like a key distinction that that was kind of in Soto and will not be present in Janthir Worlds.
Okay.
It's interesting how we're going between like these extremes, right? Like Giada Delve, the map was the meta, basically. And now we've got like sort of the opposite of that, where it's like much more exploration focused. I'm excited for more of an exploration focus. Like I love just running around the map and doing like all the tiny little events, and I really hope they do some jumping puzzles. Like I really want that. Or like mini dungeons or something. I want there to be some cool little like secrets to find and stuff. I'm honestly pretty down for that Path of Fire like experience, but yeah, there does need to be a reason to come back. So let's hope the world boss is good.
Did we get any mini dungeons in Soto? Actually, I don't remember. Because I know that we
don't
got
think so.
we got a good amount, and it was pretty good because they gave you Jade Runstones. It was actually pretty
Yeah.
worth doing them
I
every
love
day.
the mini dungeons.
And you had the
There
lanterns
wasn't
as
even
well.
really a jumping puzzle. There was like the adventure in the tower, right? With the disappearing platforms and stuff.
Right. Yeah. But what do you even
That was kind
get
of
for
it.
that?
That was kind
I
of
feel like you get the mastery. Do you even want to repeat it? I guess we have the arcane chests, I guess, but not
Yeah.
like those. Yeah, hopefully they do something like that, for sure. I really like those kind of stuff, and I think you did it very well. Like doing mini
for
dungeons
sure.
every day, get those Jade Runstones, 1 gold every time. That sounds
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that
was such a good expansion. I love
And the
Eevee.
dragons. It was pretty good. It's pretty good, not bad. Pretty okay expansion. Mediocre.
The best.
Mediocre, you.
Yeah, it's well, no, it was good actually. No, I'm trolling. I'm trolling, bro. I'm trolling.
Well, I didn't get it. My bad.
Yeah, well, maybe.
I assumed.
I'm literally never
Zooming.
inviting Darens ever again to this fucking show.
You did say that last time. But
Like, you know, my
yeah,
goal
I'm
is-
back.
My goal here is actually that I want to make the viewers think that I just don't like you. Like in the same way that some people actually think that Roy doesn't like CMC. Like they actually hate each other, right? Like that's good. I want people to make me like, wow, this is like hard to watch, you know?
Yeah, people used to believe that you didn't like Sneb. Remember that?
That's
I remember.
actually true.
That
yeah.
is actually true. Yeah. Oh my god.
It was a good. I was laughing
funny.
at that. Yeah, it's good.
I mean, that's obviously true, but I mean, yeah,
I hate people, honestly. I mean,
yeah.
maybe he doesn't hate me,
Me
but I
and
hate
Seb have
him.
big drama. We have big drama, to be honest. But
My biggest drama with Teapot is that he sucks at 2v2 Warcraft 3.
what are you talking about, bro? What
He's
are you
so
talking about?
bad, though. I'm like, bro, how you doing over there? And he's like, oh, I'm dead. Like, what do you mean you're dead? How did you die? It's like, oh, I don't know. These guys, they just came and they just killed everything I had.
Well, I mean, sometimes you don't win. Anyway,
How are we?
where are we?
Can I bring up one more thing?
you bring something up, Lara. Yes,
Let's go.
contribute.
How are we feeling about like next week, just in general? You know, the drops are coming. The drops are looking pretty good this time,
Drops are high
actually.
level.
Yeah,
They are.
exclusive emote. That was kind of hard to get.
Yeah, I
Something.
that. Did you see the drama post about that? I was so funny.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, people.
was good.
There's gonna be big mad, okay, because they bought the coffee, and now people are just getting it for watching 8 hours of Twitch. Unbelievable.
Okay, well, it's a little bit deeper. You have to empathize a little bit. There are people that live like
of course.
across
It's
the
just
world. They lived across the
Yeah.
world and they like special ordered this coffee and it cost them like $60 in shipping. And they only did it because they're such a huge fan of Guild Wars 2. And it said that this was an exclusive emote. And so the assumption is that you could only get it during this promotion. So naturally they buy this, even though it was, you know, really expensive and they probably wouldn't otherwise. And now they come to find out, oh, it wasn't exactly unique to that promotion. It was something that they could give away later. It was exclusive at the time, however. So it's like maybe slightly misleading. So I can kind of empathize. I think the level of rage was maybe a little bit overblown because I mean, at the end of the day, it's an emote in a video game, right? So it shouldn't be that huge of a deal. But I do empathize with them feeling like a little bit misled or a little bit scammed. They did get the exclusivity for an entire year though, so there is that.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I have the emotes on EU. There's not many people in EU who have it,
Oh.
right? I use them in videos all the time. And it's kind of cool to have like the exclusive, right? Everybody's like, how did you get that emo? But I had that experience for like 1.5 years. So I'm okay with more people getting it. Also, I'm okay with Twitch drops. So maybe that helps with me feeling okay about
it's
it.
time
Yeah,
to
yeah.
farm. Look,
I
you gotta
agree.
understand, guys. This is special for us. We get to be relevant for an entire week.
Yeah,
And that's very special to us. Like we're streamers. We're here for the numbers, right? If the number doesn't go up, we cry, and it's tough.
Yep.
Personally, I'm gonna tell my entire family that they should watch my stream to see the number because they don't speak English, so it's fine. They're not gonna see all the insane stuff
all
I'm
the
gonna
cum.
say. They're gonna see the number. Yeah, they're gonna see
They're
the
just gonna
number.
see a lot of
wow.
images, and they're gonna be like, "What is he doing?"
Yeah, there's gonna be 1,000 people watching my son. That's crazy! Whoa! They don't have to know about drops, guys. Don't tell them.
Yeah. It's gonna be good content. I definitely think it's gonna be a pretty interesting week. I think. I'm really curious to see like how it all pans out. Actually, like how people are gonna respond to it. I think the really big question mark is how are people gonna respond to the content. I think the features are pretty much like locked in. They're gonna be very positively received. I'd be really surprised if like feature wise people didn't like feel very positive about the expansion. I definitely think Janthir HYPE has the potential to. I think it really has the potential to be one of the stronger Guild Wars 2 expansions, especially after the full release. Actually, like I've been talking about this on stream a little bit. If I had to guess where Janthir Wilds is going to rank in terms of how good and of an expansion it is, I think it's probably going to be around EOD, in my opinion. That would be like around
Really?
that. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think that would be my guess. Yeah, that would be my guess. Like around the EOD.
Do you mean at launch, or do you mean the whole year?
Yeah. I'm talking
cycle?
about the complete package. Yeah, the complete package.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, that's different.
What about the launch? What would you put that? You think?
The
the
launch is. I think it's gonna be very similar to the Path of Fire experience. In my opinion, like very similar to Path of Fire.
Yeah.
If you like Path of Fire, I think you're very likely to like Janthir Wilds. If you didn't like Path of Fire, then the launch is probably not going to be your favorite. That would be like my guesstimate, like on evaluating it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that sounds about
I think it will be received quite positively because it's gonna be new, right? It's gonna be like, yo, we're on the new pretty map, and everybody's gonna play with the Warclaw, and everybody's gonna run around with their spears, right? Everybody's gonna like be messing around with their homesteads. I think the first couple of weeks will definitely be pretty positive. I
Yeah.
think we'll start to see a bit more like, oh, I'm running out of stuff to do maybe after a while. Right, but that also depends on like how many like fun grindy things are there gonna be, right? That's
Yeah,
like everybody
it
talked
will
about like is there gonna be a lot you can already do for the legendary spear, that sort of stuff, right?
Yes.
And I think many of the like raiders and stuff, I think many of them just won't buy the expansion at first. They'll just be off playing WoW or
Right.
Final Fantasy, and they'll go buy it like when the raid comes out, I think.
You know how I know that's correct and true? Because people in my community, which is a raid community, they're like, "Hey Sneb,
They're
if
all
I use your
weebs.
referral link after the expansion already drops, does it still work?" It's like, yes, it does. But
Buy
they're
the
just,
Ultimate
they're just
Edition.
waiting for the raids. They're just waiting for the raids.
Yeah.
But again,
Right. Which is fair.
raiders are like, we like to think we're really important, but we are the minority of the player base,
Irrelevant.
right?
Nothing but irrelevant trash. Feels bad.
We're very loud though, so it
Yes.
seems like there's many of us.
Yeah.
But I think most people will probably love the expansion on day one.
I'm just gonna use the spear. I'm gonna play my Guardian spear in World vs. World. It's gonna be good. They even buffed it too. That's the good thing. Like, they said they buffed it. It does more. It like heals more and shit. Like they said it cleanses more condies now. Like, oh my god, it's gonna be so good. This is hype. Like I'm ready. I'm ready for spears. I really like the update post. I would have loved to see the full patch notes, but I get it. I understand. You can't you can't post everything. You got to leave a couple of things for a bit of a surprise there. But I guess like we kind of move on to spears now at this point because that's kind of like a key part of the launch. I will say this: it's not going to be elite specs. I think elite specs are going to be hard to match with just a weapon, but spears are definitely getting there. To be honest, like especially with the combination of like the new relics kind of coming in, that's probably going to be relatively interesting. I think. With some of the little bonus effects that can pop up there. But yeah, like I think the spears are actually really cool. I'm ready. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do. I think some of them are gonna probably I think what's actually interesting with the spears is that it feels like to me, at least in PvE, they're just going to fit into current builds rather than
Yeah.
necessarily making new
Yeah.
ones. Because although I guess with Soto that didn't happen that much outside of like Chrono Rifle, which kind of like really spawned a new build with the heal Chronomancer as well. But these spears that we're getting now, they're going to fit pretty nicely into I think what's already there, and that might feel really good, right? Because that means if you're currently like really enjoying your current build, then good news, like the spear is going to make it even more busted, right? Essentially, and also give you a bit of a spin, more flavor on like a new playstyle that you can bring into the mix there as well.
Power Spear Mirage.
Oh yeah, that is a
Oh.
new build.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
That's
gonna be
true.
really
True.
I did
Actually,
kind of
I'm not
prepare for that.
I'm really
Guys.
happy that they're here on day one. Like,
I've
you know,
been-
that's gonna help a lot, I think.
I've
Yeah, I
the
think
fact
that's
that
gonna
you
so
carry the
long.
launch for sure.
play the expansion with the new weapon, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Soto kind of had that a bit. I was like, well, I can use the hammer on Tempest now or whatever, right? But for lots of people, the options weren't necessarily better options. So lots of people just played their old build and didn't really change anything. But now everybody's gonna run around with the spear. Gonna be
Yeah, I
cool.
think that's a big thing that's gonna carry the launch and like the amount of content you have. Because like, yeah, sure, we don't have the raid and blah 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 content, but we can just replay, you know, old content and of course PP, War's World, and so on with the new spears. I think it's gonna be very big. And
Gonna help,
I think they, I really think they really tried to match elite specs with these new weapons, like making them way more complex and the rotations way different than anything we had before. And I think in some of them they definitely succeeded. I feel like the spear. I feel like Thief is pretty good. I feel like Mesmer is pretty good. But yeah, I feel like some of them maybe not so much. NG doesn't really do that much, I don't think. But hopefully next time they just get that idea perfectly, and if we don't get elite specs, which we might, because they did say that maybe we'll get them back.
Yeah, it was on the table, right?
Yeah, maybe if the next spears are insanely good and insanely that we don't even care about elite specs. Because honestly, elite specs, at least in EOD, weren't that interesting either. It wasn't like Path of Fire or HOT, right? So like they can definitely match them in some.
We kind of got
way.
the leftovers with the EOD, right? You know, like the,
Yeah,
the stuff that was on the cutting room floor. I feel like.
Exactly. So spears can definitely be better than that, right? I think eventually.
I
Maybe
mean,
not
like,
now,
what about Mech, bro? What about Mech?
Whoa, you're right. I forgot about Mech. They're never gonna match that. Oh my
Mech,
god. you're so-
Virtuoso. Wow, crazy. You got
There
the
are some
God
mods that
Emperor
are
specs.
Like they're okay now, but like Untamed and like
Unreleased.
Vindicator on like launch day, like
Yeah. That's also something you have to people have to consider because they people didn't. There are a lot of people complaining about spears, but like, dude, EOD specs on release were they were not very good. They were not really working very well. Now they're okay.
Can you
but-
imagine like Condivert wasn't even a thing on day one, I think.
Yeah, it was.
That was
it
like a
was.
balance patch like a month later that like enabled Condivert, I think. Which is
Yeah,
weird to imagine.
Yeah, Untamed.
I have a
didn't
very
really
important
work
question
well.
for Darens.
Okay.
A very important question.
Question.
When
Go.
spears come out, do you think that we'll have a chance of beating Chomp 1v1 in World
No.
versus World?
Not even close. It's not even. gonna happen.
Finally, I think
not
I
gonna
can equip the spear on Mirage and beat her core Mesmer. I'm waiting for it.
Okay. Go. I'll be watching. Okay. I'll be there. I'll be sniping in any other way that I'm gonna be there. I
For
want to see that.
context, my current KD ratio versus Chomp is 0.
Wait, hang on though. So don't you play like the Sully like cancer?
Yeah,
Mirage?
I can't kill her. She's really good at the build.
Wait, how do you lose to Core Mesmer on like Selly Cancer Mirage, bro? That's crazy.
That's my question too.
Yeah.
One time we did the 1v1 and she was able to, like, her burst instantly killed me and I couldn't believe it. Because I thought that Selly would be impossible, but no. So
You suck,
no,
bro.
I need new weapons, new tools to be able to attack Chomp.
Yeah, surely that will make the difference.
I think so.
But all right, if you say so. Well, look, I'm gonna bet money on her, but I'm gonna be there for moral support.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so-
I would honestly bet money on her too. So that's a good idea.
Oh man, I want to bet against you. Holy, who am I gonna
Yeah.
bet this against?
Chomp,
gonna be
look
fun?
at all these Chomp 3 pies we got in the chat. That's what I'm talking about, okay?
Good.
Like, and look,
Good.
okay, we need to actually pile on the pressure. Chomp's in the chat. We need to see Team Champions playing NA monthly AT because I believe Sneb is grinding NA monthly AT. as well.
Oh,
He's getting the squad together.
can we talk about that?
Lara PvP arc is beginning. Fungus PvP arc. Darens
Did you
is
see me yesterday? I
spellbreakering.
was blasting.
Yeah, you were
last
dominating.
night.
It was like
I
nade
was
barrage.
actually
There was grenades all
straight
over the
up
place. It was crazy.
Grenade scrapper. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I am
Sneb-
having such a good time with the PvP arc. Genuinely, like it's
yeah.
so fun.
Honestly, if you just full send it, PvP is actually kind of fun. Like once you get over the initial like learning hump, right? Like then you're okay. To be honest.
And if someone flames you, just make fun of them in chat. And
Well, you just flame them back and then get banned.
Yeah,
Easy.
That's
That's
oh my god.
yeah. That's what you need to do.
Then you're free.
But yeah, no, I think I want we can do PvP after this, right? But I want to talk we can kind of talk about spears a little bit first, I think actually, and maybe relics too, because I think we briefly talked about relics and then immediately derailed. So those are things that I think I don't want to work. So I guess we can kind of talk about the combat features on launch, which is basically like spears and relics. Like, yeah, you want to go on this, Darens? What do you think? What do you think of the juice?
Well, I mean, we have nothing about the relics, right? Like no information.
That is true,
But I
actually.
think considering it, which is pretty weird because last time they really were like making videos about it, and like
yeah,
it's almost tomorrow we get the expansion. We had nothing. But I think considering the fact that the latest relics were kind of interesting, you have the one that makes you grow, which I think is pretty cool. Probably this one's gonna be a bit better in terms of like interactivity and like having fun with them. The spears are pretty fun as well. So I think I'm excited for them. We'll definitely have to see, but I think they're learning from the initial release of relics being very just runes again, Omega, right? So I think they're gonna be fun to use for sure. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
they keep getting better. I think, just in general, like the creativity keeps going up a fair amount. It's less like, hey, you just do more damage, and it's more like actual interesting mechanics going on, for sure.
I think that kind of bringing a new weapon to the table was smart. Like, not only because it's a two-hander, you can do a lot with a two-hander, and you are trying to provide an experience. Bear in mind, right, like, players who only have Janthir HYPE don't have elite specs, so you have to make this very impactful, I think. Like, it's like, ooh, you know, like, using the spear is going to feel really, really good, and, like, really switch up, like, be a very different experience, like, using a normal weapon. But also, I do think it was smart to essentially add a new weapon to the game, because it means that you have the cosmetic aspect as well. Like with the Soto weapons, it was like, oh, you know, yeah, I can use a new weapon. But ultimately, it's the same skins that, you know, everyone's seen before to an extent. But with this, we've got the shark spear on launch, right, at this point. So you can be running around with, like, you know, little shark fins, like throwing sharks at people. That's going to be really cool. All the other skins that, you know, essentially were not accessible to the player outside of underwater combat, which isn't super relevant, are now accessible to you as well. So there's like a good chunk of like extra customization that you can also have with that spear at the same time. In terms of like the weapon design, I think all of them are looking pretty decent right now. Like some definitely better than others for sure, but I do think they really fix a lot of the key issues with those spears as well. I think over time. They've definitely got some more weapons left in them as well. I'm sure they can come up with some other ideas as well. In addition to other things, like maybe they can fit in like new utility skills, new elite skills, potentially at some point. Even like a new trait line, I could see them like adding to the game at some stage. So I think that this is definitely like okay, like especially because there are already so many elite specs, and all of these weapons and any other addition they make will also affect those elite specializations. And with the core balance updates they're also bringing to the table, that also potentially creates new builds pretty constantly, right? Like, you know, a lot of the changes they've made have kind of enabled new playstyles. Like we're living, and you know, it's funny actually. Let's bring up the raid tournament. The raid tournament we had yesterday, basically the way it worked is that you banned professions every round, and it worked insanely well because there's so many ways you can do quickness, so many ways you can do alacrity, so many ways you can heal right now, and even like kind of the niche utility, right? There's so many different ways that you can approach it currently. So like I think all of that funnels into I think a pretty healthy ecosystem of how builds actually work. I would actually say that at least in terms of PvE, and I would probably make a case for other game modes as well. It's one of the best states the game has ever been in, actually, in terms of how the builds are kind of working out. I would say it's not perfect. Obviously, it never is. But I think the balance team and kind of like the skill design team is doing a very good job currently, actually, of not only kind of making new content for players, basically. Like, in my opinion, balance is content, but also making the game not bad. As well, which is also pretty important.
Yeah. This expansion is going to make them so much money. Like, holy shit.
Oh, yeah.
As you were mentioning the spear and like the legendary spear, I was like, right, people are
Swiper.
gonna swipe for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna be
Yeah,
like, I
that is
want
true.
my legendary spear right now.
Mm.
Oh my gosh.
I think it's
mean-
important to say something about this because sometimes people conflate making money with something negative. I want to make sure that everybody understands that when we say this is going to make them so much money, we don't say that with any malice whatsoever. Like Lara is just excited that they're making money because what this means is that they can
Means
make
we
more
can hire
content.
more people. Yeah.
Exactly. They can become a bigger, better company. They can do more things. They can make more content. And I think all the decisions they've been making recently with regards to monetization is moving them in a direction where they can produce more stuff. They just need to continue that kind of momentum. So I'm pretty excited about it because I think, okay, well, if housing is really good and people really like the homesteads, then one of the things that maybe will attract people to raids, because I'm a big critic of there's not being a lot of reasons to do raids right now. One of the things that will attract people to raids is the potential for decorations in your homestead. That's a reward that they can put that will be very easy for people to recognize that, oh, whoa, like I want that statue in my homestead. I want to be able to show that off to my friends. I think people would do it. I don't know if everyone will be motivated by that, but I think some people will, and I think that's important. So I'm excited about all the different things they're putting in the game that will make them money, but also affect other parts of the game positively. The parts of the game that frankly don't make them that much money. Like instance content isn't really a huge money maker for them.
I just realized they're gonna make even more money because they're gonna sell kitty skins for sure.
Oh
right?
my
Like
God.
the
Oh, yeah.
Oh. I mean, this entire
Oh
year
my
is gonna be
gosh.
insane. They also sell the bikinis beforehand. Like this quarter is gonna be packed. Okay.
I mean,
with
Soto
insane-
actually was pretty financially successful,
Yeah,
right? Like we've
it
seen
was.
the numbers and stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, Soto, like post Soto numbers look a lot better than post EOD numbers. They're making pretty solid money off of just Soto, yeah, it's pretty.
I
It's
think,
good for the game to be financially successful.
I think player engagement's doing well as well. I think one of the things that Guild Wars 2 has struggled with is always content droughts and like not having much of a reason to log in. I think EOD actually suffered from this more than other expansions, like more than POF even actually. I think because, well, actually not even, right? Like Path of Fire I think did a pretty good job of like reasons to log in because like all the, you know, the Living season 4 kind of like got going very quickly in that regard. But yeah, like EOD, if you didn't like Strike CMs, like nothing happened for like a year. So I think EOD was a really weak expansion, realistically, financially for Arena, because like they didn't release anything. Like, and then they released the tunnel, right? That was like the only like, you know, essentially like a big piece of content was the tunnel.
Like
afterwards.
season 1, but you
Yeah,
know, that
but I mean, yeah,
wasn't
like,
nearly as
that was
exciting.
like a new
Yeah.
player prep thing. That wasn't really a
Mhm.
reason for like existing players to like relog into
For
the
sure.
game. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think this is something that Sota did really well. And this is what the new model I think is really targeted at. Like Guild Wars 2 makes money and does well when players log back in, right? Like, you know, it's not a sub fee game, so like necessarily retaining players over time is not really the priority. It's more like whenever there's something new in the game, you want to give players a reason to log in. And I think that Arena's been making some really good decisions, like three-month release schedule, weekly events like rushes with the festivals, right? Like PvP events, World vs. World events, all that kind of stuff where you give a player a reason to actually log into the game when there's something going on is really really important, I think. And it's not a surprise to me that Soto did well, to be honest, because I think that this is one of the expansions that did this the best, like kind of providing a reason for players to want to log in and have something to do like regularly, even if, you know, it obviously had its flaws, but I think that it's not a surprise to me they did pretty well, to be honest. And I think Janthir Wells will be very much the same. It will probably do. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't do better than Soto, yeah, in terms of like how that.
I think it'll do a lot better.
Kind of went
a lot.
I think so too.
It's gonna be. I guess it's gonna be a little bit annoying because the homestead is gonna inflate that number so much that we're probably gonna be like, I guess they did very well, but financially, but we're not gonna know how much people really liked the expansion outside of that because it's gonna be insanely inflated. But I mean,
Reddit will let us know.
Yeah,
I'm
Reddit.
sure.
Reddit knows about
the
every
YouTube
opinion,
comments.
and they're
The
always
YouTube
right.
comments will let us know. You know, like I love. Yeah. Also, shout out to YouTube. There's a lot of people watching on YouTube right now. Actually, 457 tuned in on YouTube, guys.
That's more than 4.
I mean, that's a lot. It's a whole bunch. We love you, YouTube. Shout out to YouTube gamers. Okay, enjoy this tea time.
Chat. Way better than Twitch chat, right, guys?
But you know,
Whoa.
I guess we didn't really have much to say about spears, unless anyone has some spear comments. Then we can. Then I want to hear like the you know, the story, the Sneb's PvP story, actually, because I think Sneb was going to tell us a story.
Oh no.
I don't really have anything to say about spears. Does anybody
Wow.
else?
Whoa, he doesn't like them. He hates Janthir.
No, I
don't even buy it.
I just don't. They're not my main concern. I think they'll be fun. Like I have the legendary spear. I'm ready to use the spear, but I mostly just want to get into Janthir. If I'm wielding a spear, not wielding a spear, it doesn't really matter that much to me. But Janthir will be fun.
Oh, can I derail for like 1 second?
Do it.
Surprisingly, like this week, there's been a bunch of like teasers and little thingies and stuff. One of the things that excited me the most this week was actually the Warclaw. Like, I thought the Warclaw was gonna be like, oh wow, now it can do a double jump, but it looks really fun. You can like bounce around mid-air and stuff, and like, it's like it looks like it moves quite a bit faster. It looks like it might be one of the best mounts, actually.
Yeah,
just from like pure versatility.
I said that it's gonna be better than the sky scale. I'm gonna die in that hill. Okay, maybe I'll be wrong, but I think it's gonna be good. I think it's gonna be if it's gonna be faster than the sky scale, it's gonna be able to go, you know, more like longer, faster, right? Because like the sky scale, you do 2 spins and you're done, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe you'll use it for the griffin, maybe instead of the sky scale or the rabbit, but it'll depend on whether you can dismount in air or not. But we'll see.
It looks so fun.
It does look very fun, yeah. It looks awesome. And this
I have a neutral view on it, a very neutral view. I think it's
radical neutral view.
I think what it does is very cool, but it also feels kind of weird. Like
weird.
I am this cat that not only am I very limber and can jump around or whatever, but I can jump in midair. I can jump off of nothing. I can jump through dimensions.
My cat can do a triple jump.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to, but he can. He can. 100%. It's realistic.
Yeah.
No, I see what you mean. It does look a bit strange. Like there was that scene in like Bloom's video where you saw all the people in the Warclaw and they were like going down a hill and they were all like bouncing, right?
Yeah.
It's strange, but it looks so fun. It looks.
Did
like
you guys see
it is. I think it is quite. I think it's quite fun. I think the idea is fun, but it does feel a bit strange. What my expectation was for Warclaw is I didn't think it would be able to sort of bounce midair. I thought it was going to be able to like kind of charge up from something that had a little bit of verticality and then leap from that. So think sort of like a Springer, but the ability to kind of ascend a wall by you know what, I don't know if I'm describing that very well, but by leaping from like big vertical, they would be able to kind of like the sky scale, like latch onto something and then leap from that. So I thought it was going to be kind of a fusion of Jackal, Springer, and sky scale, but this way it's just different. I think it's cool. I don't really necessarily have a complaint other than it does feel really weird to see a whole bunch of like cats like floating through the air.
It is strange. I think the strangest clip is the PC gamer one where the guy just literally just flies with the Warclaw forever and never falls down.
Wasn't it like 12 jumps or something in a row?
17.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure he could continue. I think he just stopped because he was like, "This is too much," right? So yeah. But I think it's cool. We'll definitely see.
It almost feels like you're hacking the game or something. You're just like infinitely jumping through the air. It's cool though. It's kind of fun. It's quirky. It's different.
I wonder if you're gonna be able to do like a stair and get to the to the literal sky, to the top.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's gonna be doable. That'll be funny. I'll definitely will be one of the first.
And the thing is, they had to make it compete with the sky scale, right? Like this. I do think the sky scale is a bit of a burden on ArenaNet in this regard when it comes to mount design, because it's like the god mount, pretty much when it comes to like climbing over the terrain. So they are in a bit of a box here. Like anything that they release, any mount that they revamp, it kind of has to be capable of having utility that's kind of comparable to the sky scale to an extent.
And you know what sucks though is that the sky skill just doesn't feel that good to use either, because like it's just so slow. I personally don't like it, right? I would rather use the Griffin, right? Even if it's like technically worse. So like the Warclaw is like, oh, maybe it's a bit more effort, but it's gonna be a bit faster and it's gonna be more interesting. Hopefully, we'll definitely have to see. But they try to make this god mount that does everything, but kind of in a not fun way. It's not like the dragon flying, right? Which does everything, but it's kind of fun to use, right? So hopefully,
I was shocked. I was
Yeah.
shocked that people weren't super upset that it wasn't a new mount. I was shocked that they were because really, this is impressive by Arena. I think they've done a very good job with this, and to be very clear, I'm not upset in any way. But typically, Reddit will get a little bit like, oh, like you're reusing assets and stuff. I thought, of course, people would be like, oh, why are you're just taking the Warclaw and like tinkering with it a little bit. I thought that was going to be the kind of complaint they got, but I think that it's so different that people feel like it's just a new mount anyway. But it's perhaps the most intelligent thing ArenaNet could have done because it's already exists in the game. It's less work they don't have to completely redo something. Or
well, it just leaves it with no dead content. Like you don't want to leave like a dead mount in the game, right? Like I think reworking is better for them and for the player. I view it as a win-win. Right.
It's perfect.
It's not good to have like a dead, like useless mount in the game, right? Like for sure, you don't want that.
Yeah, I'm really impressed that the messaging was so good that people don't even think about the reuse of that asset. That they're just happy that it essentially takes new form and has utility in open world. So I'm really glad it's working out. I think it's a really good move.
Honestly, I think I barely even registered the Warclaw. It was like, housing and trades and Janthir and spears, and then Warclaw was kind of like in the background a bit. So I was like, oh, I guess that's cool, doing something to Warclaw. So again, I was very positively surprised this week to see it. It looks a lot more exciting than what I was expecting.
I think people are less bothered by it as well because one thing that I think was really good that Arena did this time, they were much more willing to show gameplay this time around. Like they did a bunch of the press stuff, like some of the events that were going on recently, and obviously some of the some creators got some early stuff, including Lara here, very special gamer, breaking into the Guild Wars 2 early access stuff, very exciting. But yeah, they were willing to show that off, and it was like very clear. I think showing the world boss was really smart. Because it has like its own like custom animations, right? It's a giant tree as well, very exciting, going on there. So it's like very clear that I think there's going to be a lot of like new stuff popping up in the expansions. I think people are like less concerned about asset reuse. I think the Soto stuff was definitely like pretty extreme, right? There weren't really a lot of like new animations that were added there. Like a lot of the terrain was like reused. Like they reused like the Octovine chests, right? In some of the in like the Dagda arena, like all that kind of stuff. So I think I think like the threshold hasn't been crossed for people to really be overly concerned about it, I think.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing about the Warclaw is that honestly, if they would have done literally a new mount, it would have been worse because now we got all those skins from the Warclaws that nobody used. Because I mean, yeah, using the War as well, but like, in PvE, like I want to use my Warclaw mount in PvE, and now you have all that too, right? So like, it's literally just positive. Like, there's no reason not to do it that way.
A bunch of geniuses sat around a circular table and thought, how can we make sure that we use all the assets to their highest ability and still make a whole bunch of money this expansion? And boy, oh boy, they are doing very well. Like I have a lot of hope for Janthir Wilds. I think it's going to be really, really good.
Yeah. Next time we get the Skimmer rework, right, guys?
Yo, I mean the Skimmer already got a rework because it's got its underwater mode.
Do it again.
Underwater,
there we go.
It's boring. It needs some boosts.
Let's
go.
go.
It needs something more, some gameplay. Okay, maybe you go down, then you go up, then you go down, and you get boosts every time. I don't know. The dolphin mount. But yeah, very good, very good. I like the Warclaw. That's good.
Yeah, it definitely is good. I guess we can just go into the PvP thing now. Do you okay? Because I think there's some interesting takes here, like because ArenaNet is doing an interesting thing here with adding a new mode, but still wanting Conquest to kind of be the main game mode there. And I think Sneb has some takes on this that I want to get in on. I want some Sneb takes. Sneb time, activate.
Yeah, I will activate pretty hard on this. I think in order for me to talk about this, I feel like I need to set this up a little bit. So when I first started playing Guild Wars 2, I only played open world PvE. I ran around on my core Engie, I threw grenades around, I did world boss trains, I did the story, and that was kind of my experience. Fast forward a few years later, I had taken a break from the game, and when I returned, I only played PvP. They had just released sort of the old League thing, and I got really into that, and I started playing PvP a lot. I think I got into I think it was Diamond, so one below Legend. And I was like really into it. I loved it. It was super fun. I have 6,500 PvP games played, and most of those PvP games were between 2015 and 2018.
Okay.
Most of them. I absolutely adore PvP. I really enjoyed, the reason I got into a lot of streaming stuff and ways that I found people like Teapot, one of the first streamers that I ever watched was actually Jawjus, because I watched all his PvP stuff. He would cast all the ATs. I thought that was really, really cool. I watched Angels a lot for the same reason. There was a bunch of streamers that I watched that only did PvP. So I'd watch them all the time. Big PvP fan. However, fast forward a few years, I think the way that I engage with games has changed quite a bit. I think I'm not quite as competitive, I'm not quite as skilled, and I don't know that I necessarily have the time or the will to go and become as skilled, though my mind still remembers being competitive in PvP. So I typically have a really hard time playing PvP now because it is far different than it used to be. It is far different. The population is way lower. I would be curious on actual numbers, but it feels so much lower. The community is way less competitive, but the game has become significantly more complex. And the reason it's become more complex is, remember, I was playing in the HOT and POF eras. And POF made the game quite a bit more complex in some ways. But this is when you had fewer elite specs, therefore there were fewer traits, you had fewer amulets, you had fewer everything. It was way easier to understand what somebody was playing or not playing. Now, if I see a Scourge or if I see a Harbinger, I have absolutely no idea what weapons they could be playing. Well, I mean, I know what they could be playing, but there's so many different combinations now. It's way, way more complex. So if you want to be really good at PvP, you have to learn way more builds. You have to learn way more weapon combos. You have to learn amulets. It's like a lot to take on. So I am absolutely gobsmacked that they're going to make a new PvP mode, because I feel like PvP is really complex. And I think it's really difficult to make a PvP mode now that doesn't... It's this weird balance. It's like you want to lean into the complexity of PvP so that the really hardcore players have a really good experience. But at the same time, can you really get the more casual audience of Guild Wars 2 to engage with the combat system and all of these variables? I'm not so sure. So I'm a huge PvP fan, but I am really worried about a PvP mode flopping just like Stronghold did. And I actually thought Stronghold was kind of fun when it first came out, but it just didn't get quite the support, the player support, the dev support, whatever, to really make it something good. I don't know. I'm really concerned about this. However, also want to comment that I think many of the changes recently to PvP have been very good. I think that there were some kind of buffs to reward systems. I like that there are weekly ATs. I like the 3v3 coming up, even though the 3v3 was a bit of a disaster before, but I think they'll fix that. I like that they want to do 2v2. And I like that they're even considering doing tournaments for the new PvP game mode. But boy, PvP is in just such a weird spot. Will a new mode be successful? I am not so sure, unless there's some really strong reason that people will play it. And maybe you lure people in with some homestead stuff. I'm not sure, but that's part one of my thoughts. You may respond.
I mean, I think that the big thing that the new game mode has to do is like make it a little bit of a reset, because like competing with people that are playing this game for like 12 years in a game mode that's very complex, it's just insane. Like it's so hard to get into, and you go play and you just get destroyed every time, right? And I don't know if that's actually possible, but like making it a bit simpler of a game mode where maybe has a little bit less skill expression that what Conquest has is probably the way to go, right? Which a lot of people in PP right now probably wouldn't like, but that's probably what you have to do, right? Like the most simplest games, I don't know, something like something like Smash is like super simple in paper, right? But like the skill expression comes afterwards. And I feel like Conquest just has so much different things, like with the nodes and the different roles that it has. It's too much. And I mean, for me, it would be ideal to be replaced. You know, the new game mode replaces Conquest. I know they said that they wouldn't, but that's probably would be the healthiest thing to do for the game, I think.
Oh, I know it's such a doom take, but I 100%. I don't know that it has to completely replace it, but I think having a new game mode that relies less on mechanical skill and more on cooperative skill, just like we talked about with PvE, would actually be basically, I think it's more important that people be able to play the objective well. And right now, I think that Conquest is actually quite complex for people. They don't quite get the matchups. They don't quite get where they're supposed to rotate. And that leads to matches being absolute train wrecks. You either win by a huge margin or you lose by a huge margin most of the time. And that makes for the PvP experience, in my personal opinion, being a little unfun. Because you're like, okay, well, I'm either going to absolutely obliterate these people and it's almost like they can't fight back, or the same is going to happen to me. I think games that are competitive back and forth are good, but the player base just isn't there and the skill just isn't there. And like Darens very accurately pointed out, look, I was in a game the other day where I was playing against two of the top 10 players, another very good player, probably top 50, and another very good player, maybe top 100. And then on my team, I had somebody, my duo had played 40 games of PvP and I was gold 3. And that was the team. And we got absolutely stomped. And those experiences, I think, start to turn people off of PvP because they're like, well, if I'm just going to go and get like bludgeoned to death every single time, maybe I shouldn't do it.
Yep.
I think that's kind of what they're trying to solve, though, with this. And we don't know much about the new PvP mode. I think we'll probably be hearing about that, I imagine pretty soon, right? After the launch of the expansion. But yeah, they're going to make it simpler, right? They 100% will make it a little bit easier. It's actually funny. Angels was talking about this the other day, and he came up with the idea that they could do something like one of like the, you know, like the payload style modes, right? Yeah. In like Overwatch. I think like Overwatch, I think like TF2 has something like this as well, where it's like it still has an objective and it's kind of almost similar to a capture node in a sense, but it's like a moving capture node. This is what he was talking about. Like you need to have like a mobile node. So it's kind of like getting you in the right mindset for Conquest. Like, oh yeah, do the objective, do the objective, do the objective. But at the same time, there's one objective. And it's also a lot about combat as well, because I think, okay, so, you know, Sneb was talking about like mechanical skill. And, okay, so I don't think that Guild Wars 2's PvP being mechanical is that much of a big deal, because I think it's always going to be like all games are mechanical and like mechanics are always going to make you dominate insanely hard. There's like a reason why you have people in Warcraft and Starcraft doing troll strategies and dominating even good players with them. This is like very common. Like if you look at any game, right, you're going to have like people doing like, oh yeah, I'm trolling in this like high rated game in League of Legends, but you know, I'm a challenger, so I'm farming everyone, right? Like that's just every game is mechanical at the end of the day. But I think the problem with Conquest is exactly what you said there, Sneb. Mechanics and the ability to practice your mechanics is obfuscated by the objective, right? Yep. It is really difficult to practice pressing your buttons in Conquest ranked PvP right now, because the objective is going to make it quite difficult for you to understand if you're doing something good or not when you're starting out, especially because of how low the player base is, because there are just going to be some games, and this is actually one of the really big reasons why I think a low population is bad, is because if you're a very new player and you play against a good player, like a really experienced player, like let's say a top 10 player, this is a really important nuance to understand. You do not have agency at all in that encounter. It doesn't matter what you do, you're going to lose anyway. And this is more insidious than it sounds, by the way, because if you're playing well, you lose. And if you're playing badly, you lose. You will not be able to tell the difference if you are an inexperienced player. And it's even worse than that, by the way. If the really good player screws up, they'll win anyway because they'll out-mechanic you. This is this is why skill disparity within matches is really, really rough, I think, for players getting into PvP, because you don't really get the feedback that you need on, like, am I doing this well? Am I playing correctly, right? Like, am I learning? Am I getting better? So yeah, I think having a game mode where it's literally just like kind of slam and like smash into people, basically, very combat focus. There's an objective. It's like very, very heavy combat focus. That is what PvP is going to need. But I think the real challenge, and I think this is something that you're probably going to talk about in part 2, maybe, Sneb, is actually how do you mesh that with Conquest, right? How do you make it so people want to play this game mode, but also then transition into Conquest afterwards? How do you make it so that, you know, the game mode doesn't just take over, essentially? Like, especially because I think the most likely thing they do is they just put this thing in unranked, right? They kind of did this with Stronghold when Stronghold came out, and maybe this replaces unranked. Maybe there's an off season, and that will be a good bridge. Like this becomes like the main unranked mode. So maybe Conquest is kind of gone from unranked, and this thing takes over whatever they're cooking up, right? And then you have the bridge to ranked. Because in the off season, because they have like 2v2 and 3v3 seasons, maybe the off season actually becomes very heavily focused around the new game mode. And that kind of is the bridge between, you have like unranked new game mode, ranked game mode, new game mode in the off season, then that bridges into Conquest. But I think actually maintaining both these things is incredibly complex, and I think even larger games really struggle with this. I think, you know, I seem to recall that like all the kind of like wacky like 3v3 modes in League didn't do super well, like Twisted Tree Line or whatever it's called, and Dominion I think didn't work out. I think people like ARAM though, so that maybe there is some hope there, which is funny because that one is all about basically fighting, right? Because you're just like running it down mid literally, right? But yeah, I think it's even larger games struggle to actually maintain and kind of transition players between multiple game modes in PvP. That was kind of a long ramble.
Another game that I play a lot is Apex, like the Battle Royale game, right? Yeah. And they keep trying to come up with like new game modes. They've tried to do sort of a Counter-Strike style thing, and they're like experimenting with the rule set a bunch. But everybody kind of hates it because it tends to replace the normal queue. Yeah. Like they used to sort of have it as a different queue, but then they were like, well, there's not really enough players actually engaging with this. So they were like, we're going to do times where we replace the regular game mode with like this experimental thing we're doing. And every time, like everybody on the subreddit is just complaining. They're like, we want our old game mode back. So it's really challenging because, you know, that's the whole issue with PvP. Many of the issues stem from the fact that just the population is low, right? That leads to like the matchmaking not being super good. It's not that the matchmaking algorithm is bad. It's just that there's not enough people to like match and like, and yeah, you don't want to split that up because, you know, if you've got a tiny play, the whole point is that they want to grow the player base again, right? So splitting it in two is definitely not the move. So it's a big challenge for sure. Like part of me, like I'm getting a little bit addicted to Conquest right now. Part of me is like, I want to keep playing this.
It's a good game mode. It's fire.
It's really interesting, just the whole dynamic. But yes, you're absolutely correct. I think that's, again, you're trying to learn two things at the same time. You're trying to learn like, how do I fight, right? Which is pretty crazy complicated, and that's going to be complicated in new game modes as well, because like Sneb says, there's a million builds that you kind of got to learn. That's still going to be true in whatever new game mode they make, right? But then you also learn the intricacies of like rotating, and do you go into the team fight, do you go there? Having a simpler game mode would be super good for that. But yeah, they can't. I think lots of people are like, why don't they just make a separate queue? I don't think they should do that. Like population wise, it's just gonna make it worse, right? If they split the player base in two.
I think that the goal is to just make some of that a little bit less important in the new game mode, right? I think it's still important that you learn what other people are playing and how they're playing it, what counters what, etc. That's why PvP is fun, because it has depth. But in Conquest, it's so critically important because of the concept of rotating and understanding when you should fight or not fight, that essentially you could almost not play the game. And you know how you know this is true? when you play against very good players, they all know the other very good players, and they adjust what they're playing in their little duo queue based on if they're playing very good players or not. At least a little bit. What I've noticed is that a lot of them will play the most absolute they'll play these builds that have crazy mobility. And the reason they do this is because they know that it wouldn't matter what they play against me, they will beat me.
Yeah. They can. This is the
They
thing.
will win.
This is why it's toxic, right? Because, and to be clear, nobody's doing anything wrong here, but this is why it's really
not at
bad.
all.
Because if a good player plays like a Roma build, like a build that shouldn't necessarily do super hot in 1v1s, it doesn't matter. They'll still farm people who are way better than, right? Like they will crush people in 1v1s no matter what. And yeah, it does mean that
example of this.
People play like these crazy hyper carry builds and just farm. Like back when I was playing PvP a lot with Nico, we would play Blood Scourge Herald, and I'm not gonna lie, it was probably horrible to play against us because we would just run around like farming people. Like that was basically how PvP played out when I was playing. You'd have like one duo queue on one team, another duo queue on the other team, and it was just like, who can kill the enemy peepos the most, right? That was basically the objective of the entire game. You just have to, shut them down so hard that they just can't do anything, pretty much. Like that was kind of how how like we engage with PvP, because that was how you won, right? That's how you like climb the ladder, pretty much.
To be fair, I feel like that's every ranked game, right? I feel like you do that same thing in League, right? You just you see the person who's bad and you farm them to get all the items and you blast, right? Which is it's just the competitive.
Yeah, I think it's just more extreme though, right? I don't think you
I
don't think you end up with such like wide skill disparities in other games, right? Like, well, not as often. I'm sure you do sometimes, right? But like probably not as often.
I just wonder. It's interesting because like in League you have like you get so much more advantage for like farming people because you have like items and gold that you get and become more powerful. But I guess maybe it does it the other way around, right? Yeah, that's interesting actually. What are you gonna say, Sneb?
I think there's a bit of a difference with League. I think I don't play a lot of League. I've only played like a little bit, so don't flame me here. But my understanding is that to traverse the entire map, it would be a big risk because you're leaving a lane like completely clear. So there's inherently a little bit of risk by leaving your post, so to speak, and then going and farming the weakest player. I think. I think there's a role called jungler or something where you're kind of like the roamer, and there you might be trying to go and farm the weakest player. But the other role is a little bit more difficult, I would say. But in Guild Wars 2 ranked PvP, the skill disparity is so high because of the population issue that a player like Doze, like, again, no flame to any of these players, they are better than me and they deserve to win. And their strategy is good. They're just doing objectively the correct thing. All I'm saying is this is very difficult to play against. I know that no matter what Doze plays, Doze will beat me in the 1v1. And Doze knows this as well. So what Doze is going to do is Doze is going to play something where he either bunkers down on the node and will never die, and his duo queue is going to have insane mobility to +1 every fight, or they're both going to play high mobility builds. When I played against it, he had a duo queue, and they were playing Deadeye and Untamed. And every time I spawned, they knew exactly when I spawned, and they would immediately come to home node and kill me. I was just like total bounty hunter. And I wasn't even mad. I was more amazed because I was like, I can't survive for more than like 5 seconds here. It's total despair. I can't even get a hit off. I don't even know what to do. And it's so interesting because I'm sitting there and my brain is trying to think of every possible way that I could do anything positive for my team. And it feels hopeless. It's so weird. I maybe that's dramatic, but it actually feels hopeless playing against these really skilled duo queues. I have no idea how to do anything to positively impact the match.
Guys,
and I think that's why that's why PvP is in such a really big problem, is because, like was already suggested, you don't know what to do. You're just sitting there and you just have to like take it. And you have no idea how to fix the problem. You're just like, wow, this player is really good, clearly. And this is why people get like falsely accused of hacking sometimes. This is why people get flamed for no reason. It's just because people are frustrated. And that's, again, partly due to population, partly due to the complexity of the game, partly due to an influx of new players, partly due to weird matchmaking. I think there's a lot of problems with PvP in general. However, there's one thing I really wanted to note, and it has to do with automated tournaments. I think I really want to draw attention to this because I've been on this PvP arc, as many of you have, and I thought, you know what would be a really great way to sort of culminate this experience with trying PvP again? What if I played in the monthly? You know, I'll get smashed 5 games and then I'm out, but it would be like a fun thing to just try to do the monthly. So I thought, okay, well, that means I have to play ATs. Well, they just recently reduced the number of ATs that exist. What this has done is made every AT more competitive because people that want to play in the monthly, they have to play in the ATs. So every AT is more competitive now. And then they added the weekly, but the weekly doesn't give you qualifying points. So I'm sitting here and I'm doing the math, and I realize that, look, I don't think there's like any hope that I get into the semifinals for any of these ATs because they're really that competitive. They're really good. So this means that I'm getting 5 to 10 points in every AT I play, which means that I have to play between 10 and 20 ATs to participate in the monthly. And I'm a bit conflicted because I'm thinking, okay, is this a get good issue? Is this okay, well, you just don't deserve to play in the monthly if you can't get more points off of one AT? Or is this well, don't we want more people to play in something like the monthly so that even if there are a bunch of people that are lower skilled, they end up playing against each other and they improve, and naturally, you know, there's a bit of progression? Because the only way to get better at something like the monthly is to play in it. But if it's really difficult to play in because you can't get the qualifying points, then I'm not so sure. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think I agree. I think I'd be way more generous with QP.
Yeah.
I think the monthly is better when there's more people in it. Simple as that. Like when more people can participate, I think that is 100% like a significant improvement. So yeah, definitely. And I think the weekly giving some qualifying points would actually be really cool too, because that would like really make it into more of a big event that people can really go for as well. Like obviously, yeah, if you're a better team, you'll qualify quicker and you're able to win points. I think that's fair enough, obviously. But yeah, making it easier to get into the monthly, I think, will be a really good idea because it is a super fun event, right? And getting as many players engaged as possible there, like, it is definitely a good thing.
Somebody mentioned bots. This, fewer ATs prevents bots from getting the MAT. I don't really care if a bot gets in the MAT because theoretically a GM should see that there's bots in the MAT or in any AT and just immediately ban all of the accounts.
Yeah, and honestly, it won't stop them anyway. By the way, like why would that stop them? Like even if they get 5 QP each, they'll still potentially like be able to get in. But yeah, I mean, if they get 0, I guess they can't. If they're like only a participator, but I'm sure there's like a way to get in still. But yeah, I mean, they'll just get banned. Like you're not allowed to multi-box, right? Like in PvP, it's like it's really obvious when someone's multi-boxing, right? But yeah.
I didn't even realize that QPs were a thing until just now.
Lara monthly AT team, let's go. C major. Right, a music guild tries to PvP.
I'm new. Okay, I'm new. I've been having a blast, but yeah, I've never looked at these ATs and stuff yet. I want to though. It sounds fun. Sounds like a cool event.
Oh yeah, the ATs are so much fun. I must say the ATs are super frustrating when you get. Look, every time I see like Naru or Grimjack on the other team, I'm like, yes, I'm about to get the beating of my life for the next 6 minutes straight. but at least there's some good games in there, right? You get placed against some teams. Like I had one that was actually very close the other day, and it was fun. Like my whole team, we were like, okay, no, you need to go home. I'm gonna hold far, and we were trying to communicate and do our best. And the game was competitive, and that made it interesting and fun, win or lose. But it's such a shame if you can't compete in things like the monthly because it's such an exciting event.
For sure. Sounds like they just gotta buff up the amount of points. Like, doubt there's too many downsides to that, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I do think though, actually, and I think we're talking about 80s, we're talking about Conquest. And I love Conquest. Like I am probably one of the biggest Conquest defenders out there. And I mean this unironically. I think Conquest is such a good game mode that it's better than pretty much any PvP mode I've ever seen, not just in MMOs, but in other games as well, in terms of how well it is designed, combined with, obviously how Guild Wars 2 works and how Guild Wars 2's class system and build system works. It is one of the best PvP modes I have ever seen. It's really, really good. But at the end of the day, it does have a fundamental issue. Conquest, I think it's really interesting that you brought this up, by the way. Conquest is amazing when you've got 5 people who know how it works, or at least like trying to, do their best to play the objective, right? So when you're with a group, when you're in AT, and this is very noticeable, by the way, teams do in-houses and scrims and stuff. Those go really well. Even if you take random people without voice and just throw them into a PvP game at about the same skill level, the matches are actually really, really good. But the thing is, that almost never happens in ranked right now. Like, ranked is scuffed, and at the end of the day, this is why, in my opinion, the direction ArenaNet is going with this PvP thing makes some sense to me, because it's all about new players, right? Like, as much as I hate to say it, like, players who play Conquest right now kind of have to take a bit of a backseat in my mind for the future of PvP in this case. Like, I definitely like they're trying to support that. They're really trying to make the AT system better. I think they made some really good improvements there. Like, they're improving the reward structures and all that kind of stuff. That's great. Making gear more accessible. But in my mind, you just gotta slam the new player experience. Like, you need to get new people playing PvP, because Conquest just does not work if people don't know how to play it, right? Or no, that's not. Conquest does not work if there's skill disparity, right? It is one of the game modes that breaks the most when that happens. I think it's very sensitive to that, and you can see that, right? You probably experienced that to an extent, Sneb, when you're in AT and you're up against Team USA. It doesn't go super hot, right? To be honest, a lot of the time, and it's kind of the same in ranked as well. And that is why I like I do think that strategically going for a new mode and then trying to funnel that into Conquest is a strategy. But I think we do have to be ready for the fact that maybe they go, oh yeah, this game mode might take over, right? That might be a reality. I'd find that to be a very, very sad reality. But at the end of the day, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a PvP mode that's really well designed but is dead, or a game mode that's not as well designed, but is really alive, right? And even I will begrudgingly admit that it's probably better to have an inferior game mode that's actually alive. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
I would
Sure.
agree.
Yeah.
I think I don't think that the new game mode is going to lead into people playing Conquest. That's my maybe slightly doomer take, but I just have a hard time believing that it would, because Conquest is so different than anything. I don't know what they're going to make, but anything that they make would be far different than Conquest. And so I'm just not seeing how these things correlate. I'm not seeing how, if more people play this random unranked new game mode, that people are going to naturally play Conquest and want to compete. I just don't quite get it. I'm not sure. I could be totally wrong about it, but I'm just not seeing how it would lead to a ton of people playing Conquest.
I feel like if it's successful, everyone's going to be playing that instead. And then Conquest is going to get abandoned. But I don't know, maybe not. But I think the biggest problem with Conquest is that, as you said, it's only good. It's very, very good when it's like 5 people trying, and otherwise not so much. And ranked is so important for a game to be healthy, right? And if it cannot do that, if ranked cannot be fun, at least a little bit, it's just, it's not gonna be good, right? It's gonna end up dying, I think. You gonna say?
Oh yeah, what I was gonna say is that I think, well, this would be my reading. The way that they probably see it going is that the new PvP mode is almost like a tutorial. So like while you're playing unranked, you're learning the combat, and when you do, because here's a weird thing, right? You need about 100 games ish to basically get to ranked. That's a lot, right? That's a lot. Think about that. Like, if let's say if you're able to play 4 games an hour, and that's kind of pushing it, right? Like that, that's not unreasonable, but it's not completely impossible that it would be slower than that. You are going to be doing unranked for a long ass time, right? Yeah. Before you actually get to ranked. So I imagine the way they see it going is that the game mode kind of would be there in unranked and kind of basically function as a tutorial almost. And then when you start playing ranked, that's when the gaming starts to happen. And maybe you also have it kind of blended in. So let's say you have like 50% of your games are the new game mode and 50% are Conquest and unranked. So you do get a flavor for both. And then in ranked, it's only Conquest, but because the new game mode is there, loads of people are playing, maybe loads of people are voting for it, right? Like every time, right, on the little, the little map selection thingy, right? Although that's not how it works with Conquest, by the way. It actually, like, with Stronghold, it will actually, you don't get to vote Stronghold, not right? The server will pick, but that's another thing. I'm sure they can make it work. But yeah, essentially, I think there's some wiggle room there because of how long unranked is for new players, that it could
Wait,
almost
what do you mean
function
you can't
as
pick
a
Stronghold? Pick Stronghold.
You don't pick it on the map spinny wheel though. The server picks.
Yep.
Yeah, wasn't it like you could
Yeah.
pick in a little checkbox which game?
Yeah, it's a
would you like to
checkbox.
play?
Yeah. Yeah, but
Oh,
what
yeah,
I
I
what I
understand
mean
what
is
you mean
what
now,
I mean
yeah.
is that that's how it works. It's not on the spinny wheel, right? That you pick the map.
Yeah,
selection.
gotcha. Okay.
It's the server decides if it's going to be a Stronghold match or not.
Can you still queue for Stronghold like
Yeah,
today?
Yes.
Yeah, you can, if you
Wow.
wanted to. Yeah, you can uncheck Conquest. I'm not sure if that's.
I did the other day. It's actually okay. The queue may take you like 10 minutes, but when you get into the game, it's actually pretty fun. I'm not gonna lie. If you
Nice.
go in
10
with 5
minutes
of your
is
friends,
faster than I
it's so good.
expected. That's wild.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. You should try it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I never got it, but I'll believe you. Maybe I'll do it on
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do it.
Well, I don't know. 100 games of practice, is that enough to prepare you? I mean, I guess we'll find
That's
out.
probably.
Yeah.
You kind of convinced me there. I think that sounds like a good plan.
You know
for
what I
me,
mean? Like,
so-
I feel like that could work, right? If it's
Yeah.
like 100
Yeah, no,
games
that could work.
of this tutorial game mode, and then you've kind of got a feel for
Yeah.
the combat a bit,
Yeah.
and then boom, it throws you into Conquest after that, and it's maybe got a couple of, a few things overlapping, like a couple of key concepts, right? Maybe there's some secondary objectives, a bit like Conquest, that you got to go after, right, and get some bonuses, and there's like this main objective in the middle, right? Like whatever it's going to be, if it's going to be this payload thing, like King of the Hill or whatever they cook up, right? Yeah, I don't know, like there's maybe some potential there. Like we'll have to see. I mean, look. I will definitely say this. I think recovering PvP at this stage, after this, well, with the state it's in right now, how much it's been abandoned over the years, recovering PvP right now is a titanic feat, no matter what. There's no universe where this is easy, right? Like, I think once a game mode's in its death spiral, which, by the way, PvP definitely is, it's really hard to reverse that, right? It's very hard to reverse it. Like, even in the best of circumstances, like, it's not a done deal either way. It's not as simple as like, oh, add a new mode and everything will be fine. It's very possible that it doesn't really work out, right? Like, that can happen.
But even if it doesn't work out, you can just make it so that game mode is the new one, so you're not really losing anything, right? Like it's just good in any scenario.
They're giving
right?
it a shot. I respect it. I do respect it. I really do. One of the biggest strengths of Guild Wars 2 is how many game modes and like the variety of experiences that it can provide. I respect it. Didn't see it coming. In retrospect, probably should have done, again, because they want to offer that very diverse experience in terms of the things and activities you can do in the game. But yeah, I think it's a good effort. Well done, ArenaNet. I'm going to give them kudos for it, obviously, but yeah, it might not work, right? I think we have to kind of be mentally ready for that.
Yeah, true.
Because they're gonna all beta test it this time, right? Like they've mentioned like wanting to like do early testing and like sort of developing it with the community in a way, right? Like getting the community in quite early to get feedback and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm very curious how that's gonna go.
I like that. I like that a
yeah.
lot. Big fan, actually.
Sounds good.
Again, it's almost like reminiscent of the way that WoW does things with the PTR, or like WoW goes like the whole way, right? Like you test the raids in that one, and that's I don't know. I felt that's a little bit too far almost, but it's kind of the trade-off, right? They do, because they release so much content. They basically need to crowdsource their QA to an extent, right? To the players, pretty much. So that because they just push out so much fucking raid content and dungeon content that it's kind of a necessary evil to an extent. But yeah, it's maybe a little bit too far. It's kind of weird to. Like I've played some of the bosses on Mythic, right? Like before they're even out. That's super weird, to be honest. And this is not as extreme as that, obviously, but I just thought it's kind of an interesting kind of point of comparison to bring up. But yeah, I think it's really good, especially when you're dealing with like a pretty big development investment like this, kind of like with world restructuring they did and alliances, and they made a couple of tweaks there. And now with this PvP mode, I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm really happy to see ArenaNet take this development strategy.
Yep, I agree.
100% agree.
Fun. It's gonna be fun to see that going to fruition. And you know what? I'm coped up. Teapot got me coped up. PP is back. It's gonna work perfect.
Back.
People just went like, I think there's a good chance that this death spiral is irreversible, and then Darren's is like, PvP is back.
Yeah.
No, it was not meant that way. Okay, I know you're joking, but it was. I should clarify. It was not meant that way. I was saying that like this is. I was trying to describe that this is a monumental task, right? Like this is like very difficult to fix this, and it's not going to be easy. It's a hard road to recover this.
100%.
And I definitely do appreciate the effort though, like 100%. But yeah, I guess I think that will probably about wrap things up, right? I feel like we've talked about just about everything about the expansion at this point and what's coming up. And if we've missed something, it probably wasn't important anyway. So I guess any closing thoughts? Any closing thoughts of positivity actually after we despair about PvP for like the last 15 minutes? Like.
I am super excited for Janthir Wilds next week. Even though it's not going to have instance content on release, I still think that the maps will be really beautiful. I mean, we've had a little glimpse into some of those things for teasers and whatnot this week. Of course, we've had a little teaser of the homesteads. And I don't know. I think homesteads are probably going to be the best thing they've ever added. And that alone will make the expansion launch very interesting. So I'm excited to get in there, jump around on my Warclaw, and break all gravity barriers and have a good time. I think it's just gonna be fun. Of course, there's good Twitch drops. So here we go. Let's blast. I'm ready to go next week.
I think it's gonna be that classic Guild Wars 2 experience. Like we said, looking back as core, Path of Fire a little bit, and I'm excited for that. It's gonna be good, I think.
Yeah,
cool new features as well.
Okay. I think that will actually about wrap things up, guys, for this tea time. Bit of an epic one here. Over 2.5 hours. Wow. Very exciting. We're back on form. Of course, there's going to be a lot more content to come. I'm going to be harassing every single creator in Guild Wars 2 to talk about the expansion over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for more tea times. But before we evacuate this part of the internet, I guess it's time to sell out a little bit, guys. Okay? So let's see. You know what? Darens hasn't been on for a while. It's time for Darens to... And also, if he goes last, he'll have, like, zoomed. He'll be like, oh, I can't... I'm playing Slither.io, bro. Like,
I am playing.
I'm 10k size on my snake, dude.
For the entire stream, I've been cleaning all my inventories on Guild Wars 2. That's what I've been doing. Because otherwise, I will lose. Yeah, I mean, it needs to be done. Mine are horrible. But yeah, if you guys want to watch me and see all the things I do for Guild Wars 2, guides, meta trains, all this stuff, go to my YouTube, Darens Guild Wars 2, or to my Twitch, Darens with Us, and you'll be able to, see all the events we do, all the meta trains we do every night and every morning, every day. But Sunday, we need to get a commander for Sunday. But yeah, definitely get in there and, engage with the community. It's very, very fun. There we go.
Love to see that. Let's continue around the circle, counterclockwise. Next up, it's Sneb.
Yeah, I'm going to be streaming basically all day. I plan to wake up at about 5 a.m. my time and just start streaming on Tuesday, and then the expansion will go live. And I'll probably just go until I collapse. So that's my plan for Tuesday at least. And I'll probably do it all again on Wednesdays. You can find me at twitch.tv/Snebzor, Snebzor. Yes, I'm Canadian. That's how you say Zed. Anyway, you can also see me on YouTube, and I post things on X, formerly known as Twitter, I guess. Under the same name. So I'll see you there.
All right, then. And of course, finally, it is Lara, musician, PvP
use my
expert,
referral link and
gamer. Okay, we're editing that out. I'm editing that out. It feels good. We're gonna edit that out. Oh man, I love that. That's good. In fact, I'm gonna use AI to make it sound like you said to use my referral link. That
wow.
Let's go.
Jesus.
Please,
you can watch my stuff on Twitch at twitch.tv/Darens. I'm gonna stream the expansion a lot. Gonna do lots of homesteads, explore. Just take it all in. Just like these other people, I'm gonna go way too many hours, I'm sure. And you can check out my YouTube at youtube.com/Darens, where I make videos about Guild Wars. It's a cool channel. Go check it out. Yeah, that's it.
And there you have it. And of course, finally, it's me. You're already here, so you might as well follow and subscribe over there on YouTube. I want to actually say a big shout out to YouTube guys. Not only do, of course, people watch the show in the video on demand format, also a lot of people watching live, guys. So if you're on YouTube, be sure to join the conversations on the streams as well. And of course, yep, follow, subscribe, okay, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, all that kind of wonderful stuff. Like the video, leave comments on the video. Let us know what you think, not only of what we said, but also of the expansion in general. And I will absolutely give a resounding endorsement of everyone here. If you aren't watching Sneb, Darens, and Lara, and me, obviously, then I don't know what you're doing. What are you doing with your life? Seriously, how are you going to get that sip coffee emote, guys? That exclusive sip coffee emote. You got to get your hands on that right now. And yeah, I'm going to be running a degeneracy competition. I had, Lara was kind of dominating the scene for a little bit too long, streaming to like 2 a.m. sometimes later than that, 3 a.m. I'm going to have to shut this down. I am going to be the biggest degenerate, okay? And
you already did.
Yeah,
You're going live till like 7 a.m. every morning. It's insane.
What are you going to do about it? Like, I'm just, honestly, I'm playing a game of chicken with my sleep schedule at this point. But yeah, guys, there's going to be links down below to everyone here because they're all really good. You should follow. You should subscribe. You should buy a copy of the game with everyone's referral link with the Ultimate Edition as well, guys. Oh my God. Let's go. And of course, my friends, thank you so much for watching. Watch all the other tea times. And we'll see you next time. There's a lot of content to come, a lot of streaming, a lot of videos from everyone here. And you're not going to want to miss it. Take it easy, my friends. We'll see you then. Woo.